Chapter 1009. Vice Principal, don't you know why our mock exam scores are higher than Hengda's? The moment Song Yao finished speaking, the vice principal's expression changed. Song Yao, shut up. The vice principal was furious when he saw Song Yao. That time, they had won Hengda's mock exam because the teacher who came up with the questions happened to be related to the vice principal. Without the students knowing, the teachers had arranged similar questions for the students of their school. As a result, the average score of that question was much higher than Hengda's. However, Song Yao was the only one who refused to listen. She simply left that question blank and went against the school openly. Otherwise, with Song Yao's results, she would be a few points higher than the first place. Song Yao smiled and said, "Vice Principal, you can't cheat in the college entrance examination." With that said, Song Yao turned and left. The vice principal gritted his teeth, but there was nothing he could do to Song Yao. Indeed, one could not cheat in the college entrance examination. Therefore, First High School still had to rely on Song Yao to get high marks. The next day, the students of Hengda saw a notice. The dean of Year 3 Lu Ginghui was suspended. Currently, the principal was in charge of supervising the Year 3 students. Class 1. Master Pei, oh God, I heard that you brought a few Year 2 and Year 1 boys to fight with the students from First High School next door? Someone said excitedly, Aya, can't you find your brothers in your class for such things in the future? They'll definitely be better than our juniors. Bei Yunj did not expect this matter to become more and more ridiculous. However, she still smiled lazily. Sure, I'll organize a gathering next time. Lu Yuanxi was speechless. Chu Zhixing was speechless. Bei Yunj, your examination hall information. Lu Yuanxi glanced at her and gave her the examination hall information. Bei Yunj glanced at it and asked, "Where's examination hall 29? Lu Yuanxi paused. First High School. Bei Yunj was speechless. Some things came easily. On the day of the exam, Bei Yunj took the school bus to First High School. Only then did she know that only 2 students from Hengda had been selected to go to First High School. Coincidentally, Bei Yunj was one of them. The other student was a girl. She looked very introverted and did not dare to look up at Bei Yunj the entire time. Until they got out of the car. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows when she saw the school leaders who were attending to her. Vice Principal, good morning. Bei Yunj was all smiles. However, when the vice principal of number 1 middle school saw Bei Yunj, he almost couldn't smile. You're taking the exam in number 1 middle school? Yes. Bei Yunj nodded and walked inside. The vice principal stared at Bei Yunj gloomily and felt inexplicably uneasy. Principal Huang, this student doesn't look like a good student, the dean of First High School said. The vice principal sneered, this student has a solid foundation of connections. By the way, tell the teachers in Bei Yunj to keep an eye on her. Yesterday in Hengda, he also noticed the attitude of the principal of Hengda towards Bei Yunj. He reckoned that Bei Yunj would be nothing more than cannon fodder when she returned for the exam. She would not be a threat to them. However, the vice principal was furious at the thought that Song Yao dared to abandon the exam. Fortunately, Zhou Han was around. Besides, Qin Youjiao, who they had always thought of as the biggest threat, did not come back for the exam. The vice principal heaved a sigh of relief. Hengda had no chance to make a comeback in this joint examination of the 9 schools. Examination Hall 29. The moment Bei Yunj entered, many people were staring at her. Some people even recognized Bei Yunj. Why was she assigned to this examination hall? Someone asked with a smile. P.S. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you for your monthly recommendation. Chapter 1010. The seats in the examination hall of number 1 high school had always been arranged according to results. In this joint examination of the 9 schools, other than the students from other schools, there was not much difference in the order of everyone. Therefore, when Bei Yunj suddenly appeared in the second-to-last examination hall, everyone looked at him meaningfully. The exam is about to start. Is there anyone who hasn't sat down? As soon as the teacher from number 1 high school came in, he glanced at Bei Yunj indifferently. Bei Yunj didn't care too much. After sitting in his seat, he skillfully took off his scarf and folded it into a square to sleep. The teacher's face twitched. Start handing out the papers. After the teacher passed the papers down, his tone was slightly mocking. This is number 1 high school. I don't want messy students to bring bad atmosphere to our school. Students from number 1 high school should also remember that the students from some schools are from a different world from you. Bei Yunj was the only one from another school. Everyone knew who the teacher was talking about. Many students in the examination hall looked at Bei Yunj with eager eyes and were hostile to the students from Hongda. However, about 10 minutes after the papers were handed out, everyone suddenly heard the sound of the papers being flipped. The students from number 1 high school slowly turned their heads. They didn't expect that the first person to flip the papers would be Bei Yunj. Was he doing it blindly? How could he write so fast? At this moment all the students thought so, including the invigilator. However, the sound of Bei Yunj's pen scribbling on the papers was particularly alarming. Not only that, a few minutes later, everyone heard Bei Yunj's annoying tone and smiled lazily. It's so easy. Why did our Hongda teacher answer all these questions? Wasn't this person immoral? The students from number 1 high school looked at this ridiculously difficult paper and suddenly felt self-doubt. Their mentality was broken by Bei Yunj. Who told you to speak in the examination hall and affect others? The teacher from number 1 high school was so angry that his face was distorted. Bei Yunj said in a sincere tone, "I'm sorry, teacher. I thought everyone had finished." After saying that, Bei Yunj suddenly stood up and said slowly, "Teacher, I'm handing in my paper." The expressions of the number 1 high school students were about to crack. She handed in her paper in less than 20 minutes. Bei Yunj didn't like this kind of exam. To her, this was like asking a high school student to do first-grade questions. It's not time yet. Who told you to hand in your paper in advance? The teacher from number 1 high school said immediately. Then what should I do? I have bad habits since I was young and I like to talk to myself. Bei Yunj glanced at everyone present with a smile. The students from No. 1 high school suddenly had a bad feeling about this. For the first time they wanted to shout for help because of a person's gaze. Go lie on the table and sleep. You're not allowed to speak. The invigilator's face was ashen, and he was so angry that he almost blacked out. What kind of students did Hongda recruit? Wouldn't this kind of student blow up the school? However, although Bei Yunj was seriously sleeping, the people around her were more or less having a mental breakdown as they looked at her. So much so that after the exam, no one present had a pleasant expression. She must have been sent by Hongda to mess with them, right? After 2 days all the exams were over. The students in the examination hall 29 also heaved a sigh of relief. They finally didn't have to see this god of plague from Hongda anymore. This is the real god of plague. She didn't do well in the exam and even caused the entire examination hall to have a mental breakdown. End of this chapter. Chapter 10-11. The students from number 1 high school were furious and gritted their teeth in hatred. You don't say. Do you know who Hongda's Bei Yunj is on good terms with? Song Yao. Another girl sneered as she ground her nails. I don't know if it was discussed, but Song Yao didn't come for the exam today. Ha, she's obviously an ingrate. Even if there's no Song Yao, there's still Zhou Han. How can a bunch of useless people from Hongda compare to us? The students in the class mocked. Hongda. What's wrong with you? Bei Yunj, are you a humanoid missile? You'll blow up wherever you go. The principal looked at her in disbelief. You've been in number 1 high school for 2 days and number 1 high school has called our school more than in the past 2 years. Bei Yunj was speechless. Did you call me over to punish me or criticize me? Bei Yunj asked slowly. The principal took a deep breath and glared at Bei Yunj. Don't do it again. Bei Yunj looked at the principal in surprise and replied with a smile. Okay, then I'll leave school. Bei Yunj, even if you're talented, you can't afford to waste it. Find a tutor and make up for your high school knowledge. Bei Yunj continued to brush him off. Okay, principal. The principal was speechless. If this fellow stayed in school any longer, he would explode. However, after Bei Yunj left, the form teacher of year 3 hurried over. Principal, I've asked around. The mathematics results of the 2 examination halls are out. The highest score in our school is still Leia with 125 points. But Zhou Han with 130 points. What? The principal was also stunned. The craftiness of this exam was already at its peak. Zhou Han from number 1 high school actually scored so high. But principal, Leia is a contestant in the Physics World Championship. I heard that Leia's physics score is above 90. Zhou Han only scored 82 points. The principal heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there's still Leia. Then, the principal thought for a moment. However, their scores are too close. I wonder what the final result will be. On this day, the teachers of the 2 schools were studying the highest score in the first examination hall. The atmosphere was soul-stirring, but no one cared about the students in the other examination halls. So much so that the teachers marking the papers were bored to death. When they reached the last paper, they almost spat out their tea. What's the situation? The student in examination hall 29 solved the last question of physics? Teacher Chin was in charge of correcting the last two questions, but there were only a handful of people who got it right. There was not a single person who got it all right. The test paper in his hand was actually the first one that was completely correct. Teacher Chin came to his senses and flipped the paper forward. When the paper reached her hands, she was already at the last question. But this examinee actually got all the answers right. Was this world a fantasy? Before Mr. Chin could react, the voice of Mr. Zhang, who was marking the math papers, suddenly came from the door. Old Chin, did you see anything wrong with the physics paper in examination hall 29? Mr. Chin subconsciously pointed at the paper in his hand, his voice trembling unnaturally. This is a perfect score paper. Teacher Zhang walked in and asked tentatively, is it examinee number 27? Mr. Chin looked down. Yes. But when he reacted, he was shocked. How did you know? Mr. Chin looked up and met Teacher Zhang's eyes. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Examinee number 27 scored full marks for the mathematics paper. End of chapter. Chapter 10-12. The moment he finished speaking, the atmosphere was dead silent for a long time. This standard? She might be the top scholar of the college entrance examination this year. Let's go and talk to them. Teacher Chin walked out excitedly, but was pulled back by Teacher Zhang. Old Zhang, with your qualifications, you should be here to help Yun University check the papers, right? Teacher Chin glared at him. Aren't you here to understand the situation for Beichuan? In the past few years, the competition between the top universities in the country was still intense. Who didn't want to be the first to gain the upper hand? Actually, we have orders from above. This examinee's score. We can suppress it first. Teacher Zhang hugged Teacher Chen's shoulders and discussed, let's find out about her results in other subjects from Beichuan and Yun University first. If she's really the top scholar, we'll compete fairly. How about that? Teacher Chen was stunned. Then the other universities. Old Chin, have you forgotten how many good seedlings were secretly stolen from your Yun University last year? The moment Teacher Zhang said this, Teacher Chen was furious. He reached out and slapped his head. You immoral people still have the cheek to say that? Isn't it Beichuan who did it the most? In the end, on the day the results of the joint examination of the 9 schools were released, Class 7. Leia was surrounded by many classmates with envious faces. Leia, I heard. Johan next door scored 5 points higher than you in mathematics, and you scored 8 points higher than him in physics. But in foreign languages, you scored 13 points higher than Johan. The classmate said excitedly. Johan was completely destroyed. Song Yao smirked and said humbly, this joint examination is too difficult. I might not even get 600 points. Come on. Every time you say you don't have 600 points, you end up with 700 points. It's really difficult this time. Song Yao looked helpless. However, when the teacher arrived, the highest score of Class 7 was announced. It was Leia. She had a total score of 641 points. And the second place in the first examination hall had a score of 5 points. Many people could not help but discuss fervently. Leia and Johan were fighting like gods. However, in this joint examination, if Leia could get nearly 650 points, Johan would probably have to settle for second place. After the second period ended, Leia was still asking about Bei Yunja's score. She heard a classmate sigh. The highest score of Class 1 seems to be Chu Zhixing, right? 589 points. But he didn't even pass the foreign language test, yet he still got such a high score. He's also a dark horse. Really? This time Bei Yunj came to take the exam. I thought it was her. Leia smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. Compared to Johan, she did not want to see Bei Yunj get a high score. She's not even in the top 3. It's not like you don't know how long she hasn't been in class. Even if you participate in the college entrance examination, you will only be at the level of cannon fodder. Leia smiled without saying anything. Suddenly, someone rushed in from the door. Oh, not good. I heard that the neighboring Johan got 660 points. After saying this, Leia's expression changed and the pen in her hand almost broke. 660? This was too high. How is that possible? Everyone gasped, but seeing Leia's dark face, they did not dare to say anything. At this moment, in the conference hall, the homeroom teachers who knew about Johan's results were also very quiet. Was Yunqing No. 1 middle school preparing to make a comeback? Look, Did Hangda perform to its full potential in this exam? The form teachers were being reprimanded. End of chapter. Chapter 10-13. There's a difference of more than 10 points between our first place and theirs. The principal pointed at these form teachers. Hangda's reputation has been ruined in my hands. Principal, let's calm down. A form teacher hurriedly said, Leia isn't the only one in class 7. This Qin Yojiao is still in our nation. The form teacher of class 7 immediately understood. Yes, Yojiao didn't fall behind in her studies overseas. The last time I sent her a paper, she scored even higher than Leia. Hearing this, the principal calmed down a little. You mean Qin Yojiao's results didn't drop? This was also very surprising to the principal. That's right. Besides, Qin Yojiao even has policy bonus points when she comes back. How can she not compare to Johan next door? The form teacher of class 7 changed the topic and glanced at teacher Wen, mocking him sarcastically. Sigh, this is also taking leave, but good students will never disappoint. Oh right, teacher Wen, didn't you say that Bei Yunj could get first? How much did she score? Teacher Wen glanced at her. I was in class for the first 2 periods and didn't check the scores. The form teacher of class 7 laughed and said thought-provokingly, then you have to tell us after you're done. Maybe she's the first of the 9 schools? The rest of the people present had already asked about class 1's results and knew that the form teacher of class 7 was deliberately finding trouble. Alright. The principal took a deep breath. There's still the 9 schools exchange later. It's a number 1 high school. Come with me. The meeting room was exceptionally silent. They had lost too badly this time. Not only did they lose to number 1 high school next door, they even had to go to number 1 high school to listen to them show off. Teacher Wen returned to class 1. The rankings had already been printed out. Bei Yunj had also returned to Hangda because of the strange call last night. Reporting. Before teacher Wen could speak, he heard a voice at the door. Why are you back? Bei Yunj was perplexed. I received 2 strange calls last night. They asked me to report to Yunda Beichuan. Bei Yunj probed, was I betrayed by the school? Lu Yuanxi was shocked. There's such a scam call? Bei Yunj was speechless. It's probably a scam call. I'll report it to the school after class. After teacher Wen finished speaking, he gestured for Bei Yunj to return to her seat. Come in and listen to the results of this exam. When Bei Yunj heard this, she subconsciously walked inside. But as soon as he sat down, he was pulled by Lu Yuanxi. What happened to your results? What do you mean what happened? Bei Yunj turned to look at him. The first place is Brother Chu and the second place is Hiyu. I'm already in 5th place and you're not even in the top 10. Lu Yuanxi said bitterly, you'd better come back early so we can go to class together. Listen to Yin. Bei Yunj immediately snatched the ranking list from the front desk. She couldn't believe that she could get this question wrong. But in the end, the first place really wasn't hers. But not long after. Bei Yunj suddenly looked up and interrupted Mr. Wen. Mr. Wen, where did my grades go? What results? Where did they go? All the results are out. It's impossible that yours isn't. After teacher Wen finished speaking, he subconsciously asked, your results aren't on the list. The class was very quiet. Then the ranking list in Bei Yunj's hands was snatched away by someone else. Damn, why doesn't Master Pei have any results? When teacher Wen heard this, he also checked the results. In the end, Bei Yunj's results really weren't there. Teacher Wen couldn't help but ask, did you skip the exam? End of chapter. Chapter 10-14. Bei Yunj was speechless. Chu Zhixing immediately explained, teacher, that's impossible. Every time Yunj goes, number 1 high school will call the principal's office. Bei Yunj was speechless. Bei Yunj, tell me honestly. Did you write the paper seriously? Teacher Wen had also heard that Bei Yunj was looking for trouble in the examination hall. Number 1 high school was just short of banning Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj thought for a moment. I think so. Teacher Wen's eyelid twitched. This answer made him too ashamed to ask the principal. At the 9 schools exchange. Other than the form teacher and principal, Leia also went, but her expression was still not too good. She only felt better after being comforted by the principal. Although they did not surpass Johan this time, they were still much better than Bei Yunj. However, the moment the principal and the form teachers entered number 1 high school, the people from number 1 high school did not hesitate to show off. Hangda didn't perform well this time, did they? They let our number 1 high school take the lead again. The principal of number 1 high school could not hide the pride in his tone. The principal of Hangda only gave a fake smile. Number 1 high school has taught well. Actually, we didn't teach much. The main thing is that the students are obedient and know how to study hard. The principal of number 1 high school kept instilling his unique teaching philosophy into the principal of Hongda. However, after the 9 school teams arrived, the 9 principals of Hongda number 1 high school were waiting for the top schools in the joint examination. After all, the joint examination of the 9 schools would determine the guaranteed spots for each school. However, no one expected the principal of Beichuan University to come. Before this, they had never seen this person come personally. The principal of number 1 high school immediately stood up and smiled like a flower. "Principal Tan, why are you here personally?" The other principals knew that number 1 high school was in the limelight this time, and these high schools probably wanted to get more people from number 1 high school. Just as expected, the principal of Beichuan shook hands with the principal of number 1 high school. "Of course it's for our country's good seedlings. These students are better than the other in your hands." The principal of number 1 high school pretended to be humble, but he was grinning from ear to ear. "Not at all. It's the student's talent." However, just as the Hongda principal was about to roll his eyes, the Beichuan principal suddenly turned to look at him. "Headmaster Jian, you really surprise me every year. How did you nurture the number 1 student in your school? Aren't you going to share your experience?" After saying this, everyone was stunned. Wait a minute, wasn't the first place of the 9 schools from number 1 high school? How could Beichuan's headmaster not know about this? The first high school's principal's expression instantly turned ugly. He could only look at the Hongda principal with a fake smile. Hongda's principal paused. "Who are you talking about?" The Beichuan principal was stunned for a moment before he patted the Hongda principal's shoulder and teased, "Old Jian, you're too pretentious. After so many years, this is the first time I've met someone who scored full marks in all the subjects. You still don't know which student did it?" Hongda's principal. Was this a student from their school? What? The first high school's principal's face turned pale, and he almost couldn't stand still. "Wait, you really don't know? Don't you know the standards of the students in your school?" Beichuan's principal asked suspiciously. But suddenly, Teacher Wen suddenly probed carefully, "Is her surname Bei?" Yes. This student should be called Bei Yunj, right? Her future is limitless." End of this chapter. Chapter 10-15. This was the first time he had called a student in so many years. In the end, he was blacklisted? The principal of Hongda hesitated. "Our school, first place? Who are you talking about?" He didn't believe that Leia would have the guts to blacklist the principal of Yun University. However, the principal of Beichuan turned around and asked, "You were blacklisted too?" It was a sudden feeling of mutual appreciation. The principal of Yun University's eyelids twitched. There was actually more than one. The high school principals were all silent. The form teachers of Hongda were also thinking, this shouldn't be a student from their class. Only Teacher Wen had a bad feeling about this, but not long after. The principal of Beichuan was also very curious. "This is the first time in so many years that I've met someone who scored full marks in all subjects. You still don't know which student did it?" The principal of Hongda was speechless. Full marks in all subjects? Was this a student from their school? Why didn't he know? What? The principal of number 1 high school turned pale and almost blacked out. He had finally nurtured Zhou Han, who scored 660 points. Hongda had given him a full marks in all subjects. "Wait a minute, you really don't know? You don't know the standards of the students in your school?" The principal of Yun University couldn't help but ask. But suddenly, the principal of Hongda was caught off guard, and Teacher Wen probed carefully, "Is her surname Bei?" The principal and form teachers of Hongda were speechless. Yes. This student should be called Bei Yunj, right? The principal of Yun University was suddenly excited. The principal and form teachers of Hongda were confused. The form teacher of Class 1's smile froze. How was this possible? Bei Yunj scored full marks in all subjects. Not only the form teacher of Class 1, even Lei Ye's pupils constricted as she stared at the principals instinctively. How could Bei Yunj score full marks? But I didn't see Bei Yunj's score. Teacher Wen muttered again. The principal of Yun University said calmly, "Principal Tan said that the score was too high and he wanted to suppress it first to see if there was a mistake." Everyone was speechless. What mistake? He probably wanted to suppress the score and hook up with the students first so that other schools wouldn't intercept. Not long after, there was really a principal from another high school who asked curiously, "Principal Jian, how did you recruit a student who scored full marks in all subjects?" Hongda's principal's heart was about to crack. How should he answer this question? How did he manage to recruit them? Bei Yunji's crazy brothers donated a building to her? The principals and teachers of Hongda weren't the only ones who had a mental breakdown. The faces of the teachers and vice principals who had been tortured by Bei Yunji were even more twisted. This Bei Yunji again. She casually took a test and got full marks for all the subjects. In the end, all the students in exam hall 29 were annihilated by her. Suddenly, a teacher from number 1 high school sneered as if he had caught Hongda's weakness. I heard from Bei Yunji that she had reviewed all the questions for the joint examination at school. I don't know when Hongda's teachers became so good at guessing questions. It was obvious that Hongda was helping Bei Yunji cheat. But at this moment, a homeroom teacher from Hongda said coldly, "What kind of joke is this? Bei Yunji didn't come to class this semester. How could she have guessed the questions?" Half of Teacher Wen's hair fell out because of her. The teachers from number 1 high school were speechless. Teacher Wen was speechless. Hongda's principal was speechless. He had a feeling that Hongda was the one who picked up the scraps this time. P.S. The previous chapter has been changed a little. Babies, you can refresh and read it again. Master Pei is from class 7. Old Sue has mixed it up. Change it tomorrow. Did our little friend cast a monthly vote? Pinch face. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:16. The expression of the number 1 high school teacher twitched as he instantly understood why Bei Yunji said that. She was deliberately creating pressure for the other students. The principal of number 1 high school regained his senses and could not help but say with a fake smile, "She doesn't even attend classes. It seems like Hongda still needs to discipline such a student." Hearing this, the principal of Hongda refused to admit defeat. When he regained his senses, he smiled at him. "Since the principal of number 1 high school is so concerned, why don't you go to the Computing Institute personally and ask for her for Hongda?" With that said, the principals were stunned and doubted their ears. Computing Institute? The principal of Yun University asked instinctively. Bei Yunji was from the Computing Institute. "I heard from Professor C that old Mr. Zhong likes Yunji a lot, so..." The principal of Hongda hesitated, but he did not hide the pride on his face. "Elder Zhong likes student Pei?" The principal of Yun University was a little incoherent. Then student Pei is a member of the Computing Institute? Hearing this, the eyes of the other principals turned red. This was the Computing Institute, the top computing technology institute in the country. It was said that Yun University's postgraduate students might not even be recruited, but Elder Zhong only took a fancy to a high school student. "I'm not sure about that. It's just that Professor C mentioned it a few times. Even if she hasn't entered the institute yet, she has to enter when she goes to university in the future." The principal of Hongda said with a smile. In the past, old Mr. Zhong came to Hongda and wanted Yunji to go to the institute for an internship, but he was rejected. Young people more or less have a temper. The eyelids of the others twitched. Her temper was too bad. She actually rejected the institute. When the principals of Beichuan and Yun University heard this, they suddenly felt that it was reasonable for them to be blacklisted. Student Pei's form teacher should have her number 2, right? Can I trouble the form teacher to help contact student Pei? With that said, the principal of Hongda looked at Teacher Wen. Teacher Wen replied with a fake smile. "No problem." Then, indeed. The moment the form teacher called, the other party picked up very quickly. "Teacher Wen?" Her lazy voice rang out. "Why Yunji?" Under everyone's gaze, Teacher Wen felt a lot of pressure. Did someone call you today?" The other party said slowly. "Didn't you say it's a fraud gang? They're all blacklisted." Teacher Wen was speechless. He should not have turned on the speaker. Instantly, the atmosphere in the arena was dead silent. Everyone immediately understood what was going on. The gazes of the two principals also fell on Teacher Wen. Those two are really the principals of Beichuan University and Yun University. Mr. Wen took a deep breath. "Because you scored full marks in all subjects, so I want to talk to you." After saying this, everyone thought that Bei Yunji would be very excited. Unexpectedly, she suddenly asked, "So, my score was suppressed by them?" The principal of Yun University was speechless. Beichuan's principal, just as the principals of the other high schools were thinking that this student didn't know what was good for him, a familiar roar could be heard. Chat. What was there to talk about? Hang up immediately. Tell them to go as far as they can. How dare you lower the score of the person I'm in? As soon as he finished speaking, Beichuan's and Yun University's principals' hearts skipped a beat. They immediately recognized the voice. Someone asked uncertainly, Is this Elder Zhong?" Chapter 10:17. The people at the side looked at the person who asked the question as if they were looking at a fool. Other than Mr. Zhong Xinglin, who would dare to shout at the principals of two top schools. At this moment, the two principals were also stunned by Zhong Xinglin's shout. After coming back to his senses, the Beichuan principal's scalp went numb. Teacher Zhong, so it's you? The Beichuan principal laughed dryly, feeling even more terrified. After all, the Beichuan principal was also the one whose thesis had been blocked by Elder Zhong. Zhong Xinglin smiled indifferently. Principal Tan, what can I do for you? The Beichuan principal was speechless. He was really angry. Everyone could tell that this student of Hengda held a very high position in Zhong Xinglin's heart. Oh, is it because Gur blocked the two principals? Then I'll apologize to you on behalf of my Gur? Zhong Xinglin suddenly said leisurely. The Beichuan principal broke out in cold sweat. No, there's no need, teacher. Similarly, the Yun University principal did not dare to breathe loudly and silently lowered his presence. However, the next moment. Eat. You're still eating. You usually talk a lot of nonsense, but now you're pretending to be autistic, right? Zhong Xinglin used his chopsticks to knock the tripe that Bai Mingzhang had just picked up back into the pot. Bai Mingzhang's hand stopped. This old thing usually only ate clear soup when eating hot pot. Why did it seem like he was on fire every day? Why was he so angry? Bai Mingzhang glanced at Zhong Xinglin bitterly and said to Bai Yunj, give me the phone. I'll say it. However, everyone on the other end of the phone was stunned. Why did this voice sound like Mr. Bai Mingzhang's voice? Xiaowen, give the phone to Principal Xiang. I have a call to talk to him. Teacher Wen's smile froze. He did not expect to be so lucky in this life to be called Xiaowen by Elder Bai. However, when the principal of Yun University heard this, two words appeared in his mind. It's over. He knew that he would definitely be reprimanded this time. Elder Bai, it's me. After the principal of Yun University took the phone, he walked to a corner and listened to the lecture seriously. As for the others, when they saw that Beichuan's principal was still on the phone explaining to Zhong Xinglin, Yun University's principal was also reprimanded until he wilted. His eyes widened. Was this a dream? Wasn't the direction of this matter a little too mysterious? Not long after, everyone started to think about the same thing. What was the background of this student who scored full marks in all subjects? Where did all these big shots in the academic circle come from? In the end, although Bai Mingzhang didn't harshly reprimand the principal, he made it clear that Yun University didn't need such a competitive method. Principal Xiang was personally groomed by Bai Mingzhang to be his successor. When he heard Bai Mingzhang's words, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. After hanging up the phone, the principals of Beichuan and Yun University both apologized to the principal of Hengda. This reversal made everyone else fall silent. They couldn't help but feel envious. Why was Hengda so lucky every time? This was full marks for all subjects. 20 years ago, there was also a male examinee who was 2 points short of full marks in the college entrance examination. However, the joint examination of the 9 schools in layman's terms was a guaranteed entry exam. In terms of the difficulty of the questions, it was even more difficult than the college entrance examination. However, even so, this person was able to get full marks for all subjects. The exchange meeting began. The first lieutenant colonel, who was originally smug, fell silent. They had originally agreed to give a speech for the first place in the joint examination, but now no one dared to call Bai Yunj. They were afraid that the person who answered the phone would be Zhong Xinglin or Bai Mingzhang. Chapter 10:18. The principal of Hengda was also very passive. Historically, the school that had brought out the first place of the 9 schools would share their teaching experience. However, this first place of the 9 schools seemed to have nothing to do with the school. Therefore, halfway through his speech, when the principal of Hengda mentioned the first place of the 9 schools, the atmosphere was awkward. Below the stage, Leia clenched her fists tightly. Her face was dark as she bit her lip. How could this be? How could Bai Yunj do so well? Didn't she not come to class? Could it be that she secretly revised elsewhere? After the exchange meeting ended, the principal of Beichuan University suddenly pulled the principal of Yun University. He asked, Old Xiang, is this Bai Yunj the one from the Qin family? The principal of Yun University was stunned. What Qin family? The eldest daughter of the Qin family. Before she was 17 years old, Director Lin Lanjun personally raised her. When the principal of Beichuan University mentioned it, the principal of Yun University suddenly remembered that there was such a thing. At that time, Yun University had caused quite a commotion. It's really her? The principal of Yun University widened his eyes. But didn't they say that the eldest daughter of the Qin family doesn't have any learning talent? If this was called not talented, then others were brainless? How could you not know about Director Lin's daughter? The principal of Beichuan University wanted to strangle him to death. You're still talking about me? Bei Yunj is at the Computing Institute. You used to be Elder Zhong's favorite student. How could you not know anything? The two of them pushed the blame to each other. In the afternoon, after the school went back, they all changed their strategy for the college entrance examination. Instead of fighting for first place, they only fought for second place. There was no hope for this year's college entrance examination top scorer. Not long after, the news that the real first place was a Hongda student spread. First place, full marks for all subjects, directly crushing all the top students of the 9 schools, and the second place was a full 90 points lower than the first place. The people who were originally shouting that the students of Hongda next door were all trash in number 1 high school's Tieba also silently deleted the post. Where the hell did this person pop out from? Full marks for all subjects. Was this something a human would do? The next day, Bei Yunj was curled up on the sofa with an open book on her face. On the table was the fruit that Aunt Meow had just cut. Suddenly her phone rang. What's wrong? Bei Yunj asked lazily after she answered the call. Master Pei, not bad. You scored full marks in all subjects. This result really makes our old one proud. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up, she said uninterestedly. No. Lu Yuanxi immediately interrupted and continued, this time in order to celebrate your first place, I, Fatty Chu, and Yao Yao are going to the amusement park with you. I heard that there's a haunted house that's especially exciting. Also, it's said to be very high-tech. Bei Yunj. I'm not going. Suddenly, Song Yao interrupted and asked, Yunj, don't you like it? Before Bei Yunj could answer, she heard Lu Yuanxi ask in shock. Master Pei, are you afraid of ghosts? Bei Yunj. Yunj, then we. Before Song Yao could finish speaking, Bei Yunj snorted. Send me the address. No need, we're right outside your house. Lu Yuanxi smiled. Bei Yunj, at noon. Bei Yunj sat beside Song Yao and said casually, what's so fun about a haunted house? I heard that many of them are reenactments of scenes from some horror movie. Besides, this movie is based on a real incident. Some time ago, someone even said that there were non-staff members inside. Chu Zhixing said mysteriously. Chapter 10:19. Bei Yunj glanced at Chu Zhixing faintly. Chu Zhixing was speechless. Did he say something wrong? Let's go, Fatty. Let's go buy tickets. With that said, Lu Yuanxi started playing with Chu Zhixing. It attracted the attention of many girls. Bei Yunj pressed down the brim of his hat and the tip of his shoes tapped the ground from time to time. His expression was still lazy. Song Yao pretended not to see Bei Yunj's wandering eyes, but the corners of her lips could not help but curl up. After Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing returned, the 4 of them lined up to enter the haunted house. The good-looking quartet also attracted a lot of attention. But in the next moment, Bei Yunj looked up and saw the real NPC outside the field right in front of her. She almost turned around and left. Yunj, are you all right? Song Yao asked. This was originally to let Bei Yunj relax. However, she did not expect that Bei Yunj did not seem to like haunted houses. Let's go in. Bei Yunj felt Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing's gazes from the front and licked his lips. The interior of the haunted house was dark. Under the eerie atmosphere, the dark green light floating in the air was inexplicably terrifying. Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing could not help but swallow. Little Chu, little Lu. At this moment, Bei Yunj's lazy voice made them feel extremely at ease. Don't be afraid, I'm here. But in the next moment, before Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing could feel touched, they were caught off guard and pushed to the front. Bei Yunj, can't you learn how to be a human? The high technology mentioned in the promotional slogan was true. Bei Yunj and the other 2 had just walked forward when they realized that there was a ship in front of them. Then, Lu Yuanxi had just run over when his heart almost exploded from fright. A pair of pale hands suddenly appeared at the edge of the ship. The first NPC appeared. The NPC was a mermaid with a rotten body. One of her eyeballs was about to fall out and there was a strange and gloomy smile on her face. From their line of sight, there was a projection under the ship. This was the surging black sea designed by the device, and below the NPC's waist was a huge dark blue fish tail. In fact, it was even bigger than the ship that the 4 of them were on. He could hear the waves and the strange and shrill cries of birds. It's really high-tech. Song Yao sighed. Bei Yunj didn't look too good. Was technology meant for them to use? In the end, Bei Yunj was dragged onto the boat. Along the way, the mermaid NPC didn't say a word. She only stared at Bei Yunj from time to time with a scary smile on her face. Bei Yunj, look over there. Chu Zhixing suddenly shouted. Bei Yunj turned around and saw the bloody words at the mouth of the shore. In the resentment spiritual field, the living will not return. At this moment, Bei Yunj suddenly felt that even the mermaid NPCs had delicate features. Sister, can I not get off the boat? Bei Yunj discussed it with her seriously. The mermaid NPC was speechless. This was the first time he had encountered such an unreasonable request. In the end, Bei Yunj was forced to get off the boat. Along the way, only Song Yao was calm. When she saw the NPC, she even touched his head. The NPC was so embarrassed that he went to scare Bei Yunj. After a few rounds, there was only one thought in Bei Yunj's mind. Leave this damn place quickly. However, at the last fork there were 4 forks in the road. Hospital, cinema, castle, cemetery. The NPC reminded them that the 4 of them had to split up at least once before they could leave with clues. Only a true warrior would choose the last path. Master Pei, you can choose first. Chu Zhixing looked at Bei Yunj. P.S. Next, Master Pei will perform what it means to be unlucky. The haunted house will start an important plot line. End of this chapter. Chapter 1020. Bei Yunj looked at Song Yao. Tian, which one do you want to choose? Song Yao frowned and said hesitantly, there might be too many people in the cemetery. Let's go to the hospital. Bei Yunj was speechless. Lu Yuanxi and Chu Zhixing were speechless. This might be the only good young man present who believed in science and opposed superstition. Master Pei, we believe in science. Be brave. Lu Yuanxi stuffed the cemetery into Bei Yunj's hands. Bei Yunj was speechless. A few minutes later, Chu Zhixing took the castle, and Lu Yuanxi took the cemetery. Lu Yuanxi watched as Bei Yunj lazily put the cinema tickets he had snatched from him into his pocket and walked towards the fork in the road. According to Bei Yunj's sixth sense, the cinema should be the safest. At most, an NPC would crawl out from behind the projection screen. Or, if the entire cinema was filled with NPCs, it would be quite lively. With this thought in mind, Bei Yunj walked in slowly. However, the 2 NPCs leading the way looked at Bei Yunj with a sigh. This young lady is really ruthless to herself. She actually dared to choose the home ground restoration. There were 4 forks in the cinema. Only one of them was the main storyline and the others were all side routes. The restoration of the main storyline scene would carry out the terrifying essence of this cinema. Unfortunately, this was the case. The main storyline was the cinema, in Bei Yunj's hands. She's really strong. I've been here for 2 months and I don't want to go back to the main storyline scene. This is 2F** King suffocating. At the thought of this cinema, the 2 NPCs could not help but feel their scalps turn numb. Not long after, Bei Yunj, who had pushed open the door of the cinema, also realized that something was wrong. The cinema was dark and empty, but a black and white movie was playing on the large screen. It was like the most realistic documentary. The video was even stuck on the white screen, causing the lights in the cinema to flicker. Bei Yunj was speechless. Why was the atmosphere no better than the cemetery? Bei Yunj glanced at the clue and saw that she had to watch the movie for 10 minutes, so she could only choose a seat in the middle of the room and sit down. However, not long after, as the plot of the movie changed, the most terrifying scene in the movie appeared. The only grandson of the crazy, disfigured old woman was killed by the villagers on purpose. Every night, she would use her hoarse and unpleasant voice to sing songs to coax the children, but the children in the village were so scared that they didn't dare to sleep. In the end, the villagers couldn't take it anymore and decided to seal the door of the old lady's house and let her fend for herself. He didn't want the little girls in the village to know about this. She couldn't stop the adults, so she could only secretly pry open the old granny's wooden wall at night, hoping to save the old granny. She didn't expect that one day, when the little girl had just knocked out a small hole and was delivering food to the old lady, the old woman didn't take it. Instead, she gave her a cruel smile and suddenly swung the iron hoe at her. A faint trace of blood appeared on the girl's face, and she retreated in fear. Then, she saw with her own eyes that the old woman in front of her had abandoned her, stood on a stool and hanged herself. She struggled with all her might, and her eyes became bloodshot. Finally, she gave her a strange smile. This scene happened to be directed at Bei Yunj. She saw with her own eyes that the old woman stopped breathing. The girl in the movie was so scared that she burst into tears. Bei Yunj, who was watching the same scene, turned pale. A memory fragment in her mind overlapped with the scene in front of her. At this moment, A black shadow suddenly appeared on the screen of the movie. Chapter 1021. It was a person struggling with all her might, tugging at the rope around her neck. She was behind Bei Yunj. Hanging in front of the projection equipment in the theater, the atmosphere was oppressive, helpless, and desperate. However, at this moment, Bei Yunj's eyes were red as she sat stiffly on the chair. In her mind were countless memories that had torn her personality apart. Yunj. Song Yao called Bei Yunj a few times. It was only when she heard the last word that Bei Yunj looked up instinctively. However, this was Song Yao's first time seeing Bei Yunj have such a gaze. Emptiness, helplessness, and a trace of cold vigilance and hostility. It was as if she had been abandoned. Song Yao pursed her lips and found that the special effects here were much scarier than what she had seen just now. Yunj, it's all fake. Song Yao's eyes were beautiful as she reached out to touch her head instinctively and coaxed her gently. Bei Yunj's eyelashes fluttered. When she saw that it was Song Yao, her expression was calm, but her eyes were a little dry. Then, before Song Yao could say anything, the person sitting in the seat suddenly reached out and hugged Song Yao's waist. Her voice was imperceptibly hoarse. Why did you only come to find me now? Song Yao had seen Bei Yunj in high spirits countless times, so when she suddenly saw this person in front of her, her throat felt inexplicably choked. Song Yao explained softly, the elevator in the hospital is really broken. I can only take the fire stairs down. Yunj, don't you want me to send you? Song Yao grabbed Bei Yunj's hand and wrinkled her nose. She was a little worried. With Bei Yunj's state just now, Song Yao did not want to see it again in her life. No need. I still have something on. Go back early. Bei Yunj lowered the brim of her hat and her voice sounded the same as usual. She only knocked her head lazily. What can Master Pei do? Go back early. With that said, Lu Yuanxi hesitated for a moment. Song Yao, you're going back so late. Should I send you? Song Yao was the only one who was treated like a girl. Then help me send Tian Tian back. I'll get going first. Bei Yunj held her phone and waved at them. Then he walked toward the intersection not far away. Song Yao looked at Bei Yunj's back and frowned instinctively. What's wrong? Is Master Pei crying inside? Lu Yuanxi asked Song Yao excitedly. Song Yao shook her head and muttered, It's just very strange. What's strange? Chu Zhixing asked. After Song Yao regained her senses, she did not say anything and only said, I'm going back too. I don't need you to send me off. With that said, Song Yao unconsciously followed behind Bei Yunj, afraid that something would happen to Bei Yunj on the way. At the subway station, Bei Yunj looked distracted and did not notice Song Yao not far away. Until an hour later, Song Yao saw Bei Yunj arrive home with her own eyes before she turned and left. 3 days in a row. Bei Yunj had been writing reports all night and only rested for 2 to 3 hours during the day. On the 4th day, Bei Yunj returned to the computing institute. Inside, a chubby intern was telling dirty jokes to girls. When he saw Bei Yunj's red eyes, he teased, Oh, Master Pei, did you indulge too much? Then, Bei Yunj, who was about to leave, suddenly turned around, raised her leg and kicked him in the butt. Bei Yunj had his hands in his pockets and a document report under his forearm. He glanced sideways and his casual appearance made him look even more difficult to deal with. You have a lot to do? The others could clearly feel that Bei Yunj's aura today was don't provoke me. End of chapter. Chapter 1022. The fat intern had always been unrestrained and liked to joke too much. However, he did not expect someone to make a move in the institute. When the teaching staff saw this scene, they were also stunned. Pei, manage your intern well. Bei Yunj glanced at him, restrained her aura, and turned to leave. The other girls cheered in their hearts. This damn fatty deserved to be beaten. He liked to make disgusting jokes every day and was so confident. F***C. Teacher, what kind of background does this woman have? She's too damn arrogant. Before the fat intern could finish speaking, he was stopped by the teaching staff. Shut up. Are you tired of living? How dare you challenge her? In the entire institute, who would dare to make Bei Yunj unhappy? The fat intern was stunned. He did not expect the teaching staff to reprimand him like this because of Bei Yunj. However, Bei Yunj was clearly a few years younger than him. The fat intern lowered his head. No one saw the indignation in his eyes. What's wrong with you? I heard that you hit an intern the moment you came in. Bei Yunj looked at the project book and started to prepare for the experiment. She said leisurely, I overdid it. Si Qingyan was speechless. Then, isn't your project progressing too quickly? Won't your brain be damaged if you use it like this? Si Qingyin could not help but touch Bei Yunzhi's enviable head. However, the next moment he was shocked by the unreal temperature. Damn, it's so hot. Bei Yunzhi glanced at him. If there's nothing else, get out. Bei Yunzhi, have you gone crazy these few days? You're running a high fever and you're still working on the project. Do you think it's fine even if your brain is damaged? Si Qingyin asked in disbelief. It won't be damaged. Bei Yunzhi did not even look up. Si Qingyin looked at her for a while and knew that it was useless to persuade her, so he simply called in front of Bei Yunzhi. Hello, old master. Do you know how high your precious heir's fever is now? You still. Suddenly, Bei Yunzhi snatched Si Qingyin's phone. Are you looking for trouble with me? Master Pei, you're too irritable now. You're even scarier than the first time I saw you. Hearing this, Bei Yunzhi's eyes flickered. She returned the phone to him and said lightly, sorry. Although Si Qingyin felt that Bei Yunzhi's temper was definitely not good, it was as if she had taken gunpowder today. Si Qingyin said, I'll take you to the hospital. Bei Yunzhi hesitated. Can't we find a private doctor? Si Qingyin was speechless. He was really born with a silver spoon in his mouth. At the hospital, Bei Yunzhi looked at Si Qingyin beside her. Brother Yin, is the new medicine not ready yet? Si Qingyin was stunned. Recently I think I need it. Bei Yunzhi slowly adjusted his cuffs. Si Qingyin was silent for a moment. Actually, Dr. Cui has also developed. Bei Yunzhi thought for a moment. Brother Yin, if you don't have any new drugs, can you get me some sleeping pills? Bei Yunzhi was a typical good-looking person who was easily forgiven for all the bad things she had done. Especially now that she looked sickly, her skin was sickly pale, and her black hair was hanging down softly. Her phoenix eyes, which were usually lazy, were filled with an unruly and aggressive aura when she raised the tip of her tail. But now she was just looking at him quietly. It gave people the illusion that she was obedient and their hearts softened. Si Qingyin was speechless. Fortunately, this guy never pretended to be obedient and focused on scientific research. He did not engage in relationships. Otherwise, people would seek revenge every day in the institute. End of chapter. Chapter 1023. Si Qingyin rubbed the hair at the back of his head in frustration. If I give you any medicine, old master will strangle me to death personally. The medicine Bei Yunzhi used was tested by the higher-ups and confirmed to be safe. However, this was the first time Si Qingyin had seen Bei Yunzhi's eyes so red and her lazy expression had a hint of indifference. Then forget it. Before Bei Yunzhi could finish speaking, Si Qingyin turned around and left quickly. When he returned, Si Qingyin threw the medicine in his hand into Bei Yunzhi's arms. I asked my friend to prescribe it for you. You're not allergic, are you? Bei Yunzhi looked at the ingredients and smiled lazily. No thank you, Brother Yin. Si Qingyin was speechless. Alright, he regretted it after doing this. Don't worry, I'll say that I bought it. Bei Yunzhi put the medicine back into her pocket. Si Qingyin hesitated. Try not to eat it. Compared to the old master, he was more afraid that something would really happen to Bei Yunzhi. In the wee hours of the morning, after tossing and turning, Bei Yunzhi went downstairs to pour a glass of water. Sitting on the sofa, Bei Yunzhi subconsciously glanced at her phone and called Huashidu, but she quickly hung up. At this time the man might be working. However, she did not expect. Bei Yunzhi was about to get up when her phone suddenly rang. After picking up the call, it was the man's deep and pleasant voice. There was a magnetic smile in his voice as if he could calm her down. What's wrong? Can't Yun sleep? Bei Yunzhi licked her red lips. I called the wrong number just now. I can't sleep. There was a low chuckle in the man's voice. It was hopelessly sexy. In the quiet night, everything seemed gentle and explicit. You even bought a gift for Yun. What? Bei Yunzhi asked instinctively. Unexpectedly, a video call suddenly popped up on her phone. After the call was connected, Bei Yunzhi looked at the dim light on the screen. The man's well-defined hand suddenly took out a red headband from the side. For some reason she had a bad feeling. As expected. When Bei Yunzhi saw it clearly, she realized that it was a pair of elk antlers. Bei Yunzhi was speechless. What special fetish did this man have? Huashidu glanced at Bei Yunzhi. The corners of his peach blossom eyes curled up, looking seductive and light. He said naturally, brother likes little bunnies too. Bei Yunzhi looked up and saw the man's slender and clean hand playing with another white cat ear that had appeared out of nowhere. This scene was inexplicably ambiguous and seductive. It made people blush and their hearts beat faster. However, the man was quite regretful. It's a pity that Zheng Su couldn't buy it after going to 3 stores. Bei Yunzhi's Hua. Did Seng Su have any self-awareness as a personal assistant? Pei Yunj rejected him expressionlessly. Doesn't Yun Yun like furry things? Of course. The man said this without blushing at all. Pei Yunj, if this thing appeared in someone else's hands she would find it cute. However, this D*MN man's gaze was obviously wrong. I'm going to sleep. Pei Yunj hung up the phone, afraid that Hoshidu would say something else. The man looked at the young lady on the other end of the video call. Her face was tense, but her ears were red. He could not help but smile. But soon, Hoshidu casually threw the white cat ear in his hand on the table. Go and call Zhong Xinglin and ask when the test for the medicine will be over. P.S. Not long after I got home I'll continue to update. End of chapter. Chapter 1024. At night. After being disturbed by Hoshidu's thoughts, she inexplicably slept much better. The next day at the computing institute, Pei Yunj sent a message to the man. When is brother coming back? Very quickly there was a reply. Yun Yun misses me that much? Pei Yunj, she could almost imagine Hoshidu's tone when he said this to her. What are you looking at, Master Pei? Si Qingyin couldn't help asking. Pei Yunj glanced at Hoshidu and instinctively put her phone back into her pocket. Nothing. Si Qingyin held the thermos flask with one hand and almost thought that he was seeing Pei Yunj in a relationship. However, Pei Yunj's eyes were indeed not so red today. Pei Yunj, she didn't know whether to say that this medicine was effective or that Hoshidu was effective. Si Qingyin suddenly remembered. You just went to get a drip yesterday. Why are you still here today? Did you take medicine yesterday? Si Qingyin asked. Pei Yunj replied, yes. Si Qingyin nodded thoughtfully. The effect is quite good. Back home. Pei Yunj was chatting with Auntie Meow downstairs when she suddenly received a message from the man. Sleep in brother's bedroom today. There's nothing much at home. Seeing that Pei Yunj was in a better state than yesterday, Si Qingyin did not say much and only reminded her to rest well. At 5 in the afternoon, Pei Yunj was chased out of the institute and asked to rest early. Pei Yunj, couldn't he do something that a human should do? Miss Assistant Seng came over just now, Auntie Meow said. Pei Yunj had yet to send a message to ask. Then she saw another new message. This way you can dream of brother. Pei Yunj had just gone upstairs when she knew what Seng Su had done. He had cut off the power in her room. Pei Yunj asked without looking up, is he here to get the documents? Not really. He just stood by our power supply box for a long time. I don't know what he's doing. At night. But after class, Jasmine and Tich's minds were in a mess. Did they just see a man's suit behind the teacher's back? Teacher Pei was cohabiting with someone? It was hard to guess who was behind this. Not long after. Pei Yunj went to the man's bedroom to borrow electricity and taught Jasmine and Tich for 2 hours. After he was done, he prepared to take a shower and sleep. She unconsciously frowned and opened her eyes, but she didn't see anyone in the bedroom. Outside the window, everything was quiet and the night light was like fireflies. Yun Yun? Pei Yunj, who knew nothing, changed into her pajamas and went to bed. There was a faint fragrance on the bed, which made people feel at ease as usual. In the middle of the night, Pei Yunj felt a little cold on her forehead and subconsciously reached out to take it. Only then did she realize that it was a cooling patch. She didn't know when the man had appeared in front of her. His usually lazy peach blossom eyes were now staring straight at her. Hoshidu was about to reach out and tidy up the cooling stickers that Pei Yunj had crooked. However, Pei Yunj suddenly grabbed his hand. The man's deep and familiar voice fell into her ears. She looked up. The man lowered his head in surprise, not wanting to meet the girl's direct gaze. This child had a fever and was confused, but she had become much bolder. Hoshidu curled his lips and patiently allowed her to hold his hand. His other hand slowly tidied up her cooling stickers. You can't even take care of yourself after being away for 2 weeks? Hoshidu had just finished speaking when Pei Yunj suddenly called out, Brother? Chapter 1025. The man sat by the bed. Not long after he got off the plane he rushed home. At first he thought that the little girl could not sleep because he was not around. But he did not expect her to be sick. Are you feeling unwell? Hoshidu sent a message to the private doctor and allowed the little girl to hold his hand. He said, after sweating you won't feel uncomfortable anymore. However, Hoshidu did not know that Pei Yunj did not hear a single word he said. At this moment, Pei Yunj looked at him for a long time before saying, Come here. Hoshidu raised his eyebrows and looked at the little girl on the bed. There was a hint of playfulness in his nonchalant eyes. He put down his phone and listened to her. He sat closer. However, the little girl lying on the bed was still staring at him with dissatisfaction in her eyes. The man bent down with interest. His low and hoarse laughter was seductive. Are you confused because you're sick, Yunyan? Bei Yunja's eyes flickered. Then, before the man could react, Bei Yunj suddenly reached out and wrapped her slender and fair arms around the man's neck. Huashidu was hooked by this sudden hug and leaned over instinctively. However, he quickly supported himself with one hand on the edge of the bed. He was afraid that he would hurt the culprit. Yun. The man's voice was low and hoarse and his sexy Adam's apple bobbed. But then Bei Yunj, who had her hands around Huashidu's neck, gradually looked down. She stared at the mole on the man's Adam's apple. Suddenly, the man had yet to speak. Bei Yunj suddenly leaned closer, hooked her arms around the man's neck, and kissed the mole on his Adam's apple. The man also felt a soft and warm layer on his Adam's apple. His body froze, and an unknown evil fire suddenly rose in his lower abdomen. Do I have to take the initiative even in my dreams, brother? Bei Yunj did not notice the darkness in the man's eyes. Her beautiful eyes curved lazily, and she felt that she had completed a major event in her life. She finally kissed the mole on Huashidu's Adam's apple. Although it was a dream, Huashidu was so angry that he laughed. In a dream? Bei Yunj, who was originally a little dizzy, saw Huashidu's dangerous gaze clearly. This dream was a little realistic. What else do you want? The lazy and noble man suddenly laughed and asked her while raising the temperature in the room. Tell me about it. Before Bei Yunj could regain her senses, she saw Huashidu throw the remote control away and suddenly take off his coat and suit jacket. Bei Yunj? She didn't think about that. Bei Yunj watched as the man pulled off his tie with one hand and silently pulled the blanket up. I still want to sleep. Not long after, Bei Yunj was scooped up and leaned against the cushion behind her. They looked up and met each other's eyes. The man's eyes were dark and his magnetic voice was lazy and playful as he asked, Isn't it too much of a loss for you to only kiss me once in your dream, Yun? Bei Yunj's gaze fell on the place she had just kissed. Because it was her first time doing it, the kiss ended very quickly. Bei Yunj's heart started to itch again. However, when Bei Yunj looked up at Huashidu again, she quickly dismissed this thought. The man in front of her had a dark gaze. It was dangerous and aggressive, as if he could swallow her at any time. She didn't know why. Bei Yunj's mind was in a mess, but she had a premonition. If she really dared to act recklessly, this person would really punish her on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 1026. Bei Yunj, wasn't this dream too dangerous? Brother, Just as Bei Yunj's thoughts were running wild, she suddenly seemed to hear movement at the door. Bei Yunj subconsciously looked at the door. Seeing that the young lady dared to be distracted in front of him, the man who had always been casual licked his itchy teeth. The next moment, Bei Yunj had just turned around when she was suddenly pressed against the cushion. She was surrounded by the man's strong aggressive aura. She looked up and met the man's explicit and burning gaze. This dream was too wild. It was precisely because of this that Bei Yunj did not suspect that this was not a dream. Normally, with the man's usual style, it was impossible for him to do these things to her. Suddenly, Bei Yunj sucked in a breath of cold air. The man bit her neck with a moderate amount of force. It was numb but not painful. However, the atmosphere was so ambiguous that it made her cheeks burn. Don't! Bei Yunj was about to push him away and subconsciously avoided the man's aggressive aggression. However, in the next moment, the man covered the back of her head with one hand and gently stroked her long black hair. In fact, he did not allow her to retreat. The man easily eased her uneasiness, but he also led this dangerous situation that made her blush and her heart race. Outside the door, it was Jiang Baichuan, whom he had met at the private clinic last time. When Huashidu came out again, Jiang Baichuan sized up the man in front of him. He was no different from usual. Where's your family? Jiang Baichuan asked. Huashidu lit a cigarette and casually leaned against the door. Inside. Jiang Baichuan. He remembered that Huashidu's family member was only in high school, right? Huashidu was smoking in front of him. Then, when Jiang Baichuan walked in, the girl was dressed neatly except for an obvious bite mark on her neck. Huashidu also had times when he was not human. Jiang Baichuan looked at Huashidu with a complicated expression. I asked you to come and see a doctor, not to stand there foolishly. The man's voice sounded indifferently. Jiang Baichuan didn't dare to say much. He just quietly checked Bei Yunj's temperature and asked fearlessly, Is it really just a fever? No other treatment needs? There were also people in the circle who would often treat certain injuries caused by excessive indulgence in certain aspects for the lovers of the rich. Next. When Jiang Baichuan met Huashidu's gaze, he immediately shut his mouth. Get some ointment for your neck, Huashidu said slowly. Jiang Baichuan said subconsciously, the one on your neck will disappear in 2 or 3 days. Huashidu turned to look at him. Yes, Master Du. Jiang Baichuan was very polite. Continent K. What's the situation with Master Du? Where did he go? Why are you here to see me? The man was wearing a white coat. His features were handsome and elegant, and his temperament was cold. Zhou Yu said, Dr. Song, Master Du has returned to country A these few days, but he will be here soon. Song Su laughed. Since when is there someone in country A who can make Master Du so happy that he forgets about home? Zhou Yu was silent for a moment. Master Du, this time I brought her to see you. What? He wants to bring a woman to see Continent K? Song Su frowned, his tone filled with dissatisfaction. The next day, Bei Yunj woke up and felt that her hand hurt a little. She opened her eyes and saw that it seemed to have been injected with saline last night. After Bei Yunj went downstairs, she saw Huashidu reading the newspaper. Brother? A memory suddenly appeared in Bei Yunj's mind. The end of this chapter. Chapter 1027. Last night, she seemed to have had a very unruly dream. Bei Yunj thought of the scene where the man turned the tables and her legs almost went weak. Let's go downstairs and eat. The man's expression was natural, as if nothing had happened. Brother, did you come back last night? Bei Yunj probed. The man sat at the dining table and replied lightly, yes. Such a normal reaction made Bei Yunj feel that what happened last night was just a dream. What's wrong? Huashidu looked up at her. Bei Yunj. Then did you greet me last night? The man's hand that was holding his chopstick stopped and he suddenly smiled. Yunyun dreamed of me last night? Bei Yunj. This rhetorical question made Bei Yunj speechless. Last night I went in to see you. Before Bei Yunj could ask again, the man continued, you've been running a high fever, so I asked the doctor to give you an 4 drip. Bei Yunj. That's it? Did Yunyun do something to me in the dream? The man's thin red lips curled up as he asked with interest. Bei Yunj. She could not believe that she could be so useless in her dream. After being bitten on the neck by the D*Mn man, she begged for mercy. What was even more unexpected was that the Huashidu in her dream could be so terrible and do things that made her blush. Yunyun, a person's dream reflects their personal preferences to a certain extent. However, the man still smiled slowly. Bei Yunj. I'm hungry. After breakfast, Bei Yunj went upstairs and looked at herself in the mirror doubtfully. In the end, there was no mark on the back of her neck. Bei Yunj pondered and slowly went downstairs. Suddenly, Miss Pei, let me take your temperature. Bei Yunj looked up and saw Jiang Baichuan. She nodded and replied, okay, thank you. Jiang Baichuan also secretly glanced at Bei Yunj. From time to time she touched the spot where she was bitten last night. He looked rather puzzled. Obviously he didn't know what had happened last night. Jiang Baichuan couldn't help but glance at the elegant man beside him. He was truly a refined scum. This was also the first time Jiang Baichuan realized that this young man could actually lie to a young lady without blushing at all. Dr. Jiang? Bei Yunj's voice interrupted Jiang Baichuan's thoughts. Let's take Miss Pei's temperature first. After regaining his senses, Jiang Baichuan immediately opened the medical box. Until Jiang Baichuan left. Huashidu suddenly said, Yunyun, I'm going out of the country in 2 days. Do you want to go with me? Bei Yunj didn't have much to do in the station. He just needed to report to Zhong Xinglin. Sure. Bei Yunj did not look up at Huashidu either. However, when she thought of the dream last night, her ears inexplicably heated up. Why would she have such a dream? The man only curled his lips and didn't say much. The next day, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the computing institute when Zhong Xinglin handed a bottle of new medicine to Bei Yunj. This bottle has just been tested. For now, this new medicine should be the most compatible with you. Bei Yunj smiled. Thank you, Elder Zhong. Zhong Xinglin couldn't help but mutter in his heart as he drank water. There was no need to thank him. If it wasn't for the person beside her, who would be able to invite Luo Xie to make medicine. Suddenly, oh right, I'm going to Continent K the day after tomorrow. Zhong Xinglin choked. Cough cough, where are you going? P.S. Dr. Luo's name has been edited. It's easy to get mixed up. End of this chapter. Chapter 1028. Nance had long said that someone in Continent K was targeting Gur. Now, had Gur been discovered? My brother seems to be doing something in Continent K. Bei Yunji's beautiful eyes curved as she lazily rested her chin on her hand. Zhong Xinglin was silent for a moment before probing, Mr. Hua? Yes. Si Qingyan was speechless. So Huashidu was back. No wonder he was in such a good mood today. That's good. Zhong Xinglin heaved a sigh of relief. If it was Huashidu, then there would be no danger in going to Continent K. But Gur, I know some people in Continent K. If you want to visit the school or the laboratory, I only plan to play for a few days. Zhong Xinglin's smile froze. All right then. It was harder than ascending to the heavens for his Gur to open up more interpersonal relationships. That day, Huashidu took a private plane to Continent K. After arriving at Continent K, Zheng Su brought Bei Yunji back to Huashidu's private manor. Huashidu went to settle some matters. The population density of Continent K was much lower than that of Yunqing, but the buildings they encountered on the way showed the prosperity of this continent. Continent K is more special, and the difference in regional jurisdiction is also huge. This area is usually crowded at night, and there is no domestic security. Zheng Su reminded her. In Zheng Su's opinion, a pampered young lady like Bei Yunji was indeed not suitable to come to a place like Continent K. You must bring bodyguards with you when you go out. Zheng Su could not help but remind her again. Got it? Bei Yunji replied lazily. Private manor. Bei Yunji had just gone upstairs. After looking at her room, she was about to go downstairs for some tea. However, she did not expect to hear someone talking about her. What kind of bewitching potion has Huashidu been drugged with? Is a woman worth his attention? He really brought her to the manor? Bei Yunji pondered. The woman that the person downstairs was talking about should be her. Dr. Luo, Zheng Su hurriedly wanted to stop him. However, Luo Xie sneered. I want to see what kind of fairy he has with him. After saying this, Luo Xie hadn't walked up yet when he suddenly looked up and saw the lazy girl upstairs. Black hair, red dress, snow-white skin, a slender waist and beautiful eyes that made people not dare to look straight at her. She didn't look like a celestial immortal. Instead, she looked more like a demoness who could bring disaster to countries and people. Are you the woman beside Huashidu? Luo Xie regained his senses and asked in an unfriendly tone. Zheng Su had already figured out Bei Yunji's temper. He didn't dare to watch what was about to happen. As expected, Bei Yunji glanced at him and went downstairs. Assistant Zheng, I'm going to take a nap later. His meaning was obvious. He wanted Zheng Su to get him out of here. Luo Xie's handsome face was about to change in anger. Wasn't the woman beside Huashidu too arrogant? However, when Zheng Su heard that, he really turned to look at him and said sincerely, Dr. Luo, Master Du will probably be back at night. Why don't you go back first? Miss Pei does have the habit of taking afternoon naps. Luo Xie's expression was about to collapse. He didn't expect even Zheng Su to listen to her so much. She's taking an afternoon nap. Can't I sit here? Luo Xie gave a fake smile. Zheng Su was serious. Miss Pei was sick 2 days ago and needs to rest. What illness? Fever. Luo Xie had studied medicine for so many years, but this was the first time he knew that she needed to rest to reduce a fever. End of chapter. Chapter 1029. Bei Yunji went downstairs to get a plate of fruits. Before she went upstairs, she asked Zheng Su to help her bring the laptop upstairs. Luo Xie looked at this situation. It was obvious that Zheng Su had already treated Bei Yunji as Huashidu's subordinate. Therefore, when Huashidu was not around, Zheng Su only listened to Bei Yunji. Zheng Su had just sent Bei Yunji's precious laptop upstairs. When he went downstairs, he was stopped by Luo Xie. Assistant Zheng, what is she studying? Luo Xie guessed that Bei Yunji should also be a university student. Oh, my Miss Pei is still a third-year high school student. She just took a leave of absence. Zheng Su smiled nonchalantly. Luo Xie could not believe it. She's still a high school student? Zheng Su immediately explained, afraid that Luo Xie would misunderstand Huashidu. Miss Pei is already an adult. She just repeated a grade previously. She still dares to take a leave of absence after repeating a grade? Luo Xie sneered, his eyes full of disdain. He had already treated Bei Yunji as a scheming woman who wanted to cling onto Huashidu. Don't you think that this woman is very scheming? Luo Xie still wanted to remind Zheng Su. However, he did not expect Zheng Su to nod desperately in agreement and anger. I have indeed never seen a woman more terrifying than Miss Pei. It was only because he had secretly reported to Master Du in the district last time. Miss Pei had held a grudge for half a month. Every time she went to the whole corporation, she would bring a deck of cards and win all of his year-end bonus. Then do you still think that this woman is compatible with Huoshidu? Luoxia frowned. Zheng Su was stunned. If Master Du thinks they are compatible, then they are. Luoxia's expression was about to crack. An idea flashed in Zheng Su's mind. He suddenly grabbed Luoxia's arm sneakily. Dr. Luo, can you do me a favor? My year-end bonus is in Miss Pei's hands. Luoxia looked at him sideways and gestured for him to continue. Miss Pei said that as long as I finish her homework, she will return it to me. But mathematics is too difficult. I don't dare to blindly do Miss Pei's homework. Can you do me a favor? Although Zheng Su graduated from a famous university, the difficulty of mathematics questions these days were already different from that of his time. When Luoxia heard this, his face darkened. He immediately called Huoshidu. Soon, the man's pleasant voice sounded. What's the matter? Master Du, the high school girl beside you even asked your assistant to do her homework. Luoxia wanted to tell Huoshidu that Bei Yunj was arrogant because she was pampered. But in the next moment, Huoshidu asked unhurriedly, has Zheng Su finished writing? Luoxia, what the hell? Zheng Su's math is not very good. Let Zheng Su leave his math homework to Zhou Yu. Huoshidu looked at the documents and said slowly, Hengda is quite strict with the quality of the student's homework. Zhou Yu's body trembled. Has the boss become so crazy? He was a high-end talent with a double major in mathematics and finance from Neely University, yet he still had to do high school homework. At this moment, the most unbelievable one was Luoxia. Huoshidu was clearly a person who was self-abiding, polite, and indifferent. It was almost impossible to see him favoring anyone. But now Huoshidu had completely lost his bottom line for a woman. Master Du, are you serious? Luoxia could not help but ask. In 2 days she will be doing a checkup in your studio. I hope you can do your best and not make any mistakes. Chapter 1030. Me? Before Luoxia could say anything, the other party hung up. Not long after, Luoxia left with a dark expression. Back in the laboratory, a little fatty smiled and said, Boss, you're back. Did you see the forum? I'm not free. Luoxia's expression was ugly. The little fatty knew that his boss was not satisfied with the woman beside Master Du this time. His boss came back with a dark expression. Something must have happened. He leaned forward sneakily. Boss, the forum said that the Computing Institute won the International Computing Competition. The Computing Institute. Luoxia's face darkened even more and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. Jin Kai, this is the first time I've realized that you're not afraid of death. The little fatty trembled and immediately explained, No, boss, listen to me. All the semi-finals will be included in this international competition. The little fatty hinted crazily. Also, only members under the age of 35 are allowed to participate in the competition. Other than Si Qingyan, who else is under the age of 35 in the Computing Institute? You know. Luoxia was stunned. You're talking about? That's right. Boss, haven't you liked her for a long time? The little fatty continued to smile obsequiously. How is it, boss? Are you happy? Where is the semi-finals? Luoxia took a deep breath. The gloominess from before had completely disappeared. What could make a withered tree come back to life more than the power of an idol? I heard that it's either Continent K or Country J, the little fatty said. However, rumor has it that although she's quite young, some people say that she's already 35. The little fatty wanted to say something but hesitated. Boss, you're only 27. Do I need you to teach me what kind of woman I like? Luoxia looked at him coldly. The little fatty was speechless. After all, Luoxia was the target of countless female researchers in the industry. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly liked that person who had never shown her face. He even had to say that he had a very special feeling for her. But who in the industry didn't feel that she was special? This was a super genius who had appeared out of nowhere and won 2 major awards in the world. However, everyone knew that she was an idol. She could only be seen from afar and not blasphemed. Only Luoxia kept thinking that he could become a successful man behind the scenes. Little Fatty's mood was complicated. Boss, actually, I think you're just... Luoxia suddenly interrupted. You stay in the lab. I'm going out to buy some suits. Little Fatty, hopefully she wasn't pregnant and wasn't ugly. Otherwise he would be letting down his boss's yearning for love. The next day, in the bedroom, the person who was too lazy to move asked while biting a cherry lazily. Little Greg, when can you feed me cherries? The laptop on the bed that was forced to chat with him automatically turned black. The Gemini system, which had yet to be installed into the robot's body, had learned one of the greatest human skills in the past few days, playing dead. Although it was shameful, it was very useful. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Miss Pei?" It was Tseng Su's voice. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and went to open the door. "What's wrong?" Dr. Luo said that there will be a lecture by a famous computer professor in the K-Continent Academy. You should go and take a look. Tseng Su remembered that Bei Yunj was very interested in this aspect. There were talents everywhere in the K-Continent Academy. If Miss Pei could make a few friends during this trip, she would definitely benefit. End of chapter. Chapter 1031. Bei Yunj did not say a word. She only smiled politely at Tseng Su and prepared to close the door. "Wait." Tseng Su immediately blocked the door. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows, but there was no smile in her eyes. "Is there anything else?" Tseng Su's scalp went numb for some reason and he said pitifully, "Miss Pei, since you've come to Continent K, you should at least walk around. What if Master Du thinks that I'm deliberately not letting you out?" Tseng Su was originally worried that Bei Yunj would be unsafe if she wandered around. However, he did not expect Bei Yunj to be so homebody. Continent K Academy. Bei Yunj chewed on a candy and sat in the back seat without saying a word. Her aura was filled with impatience. "Miss Pei, we're here." Tseng Su was excited. Actually, Tseng Su had never been to Continent K Academy, but he knew that it was a top academy. Although it did not participate in the international rankings, its reputation was still not inferior to Neely University. Tseng Su had wanted to go to K University in the past, but unfortunately, K University was very strict with its students. "Miss Pei, aren't you excited? This is a top academy." Tseng Su chattered along the way. Bei Yunj answered perfunctorily. However, she did not expect someone to suddenly call her on the way. "Miss Pei?" Bei Yunj turned around and recognized Luo Xia. "Dr. Luo, long time no see." Bei Yunj glanced at him and left after politely brushing him off. Tseng Su was stunned by this scene. Miss Pei really didn't play by the rules as usual. She was so cold and perfunctory that no one could find fault with her. Luo Xia's face darkened as he blocked Bei Yunj. "Miss Pei's way of greeting is really special. Where are you going?" Tseng Su immediately said, "I'm taking Miss Pei to a computer lecture." "Computer lecture?" Suddenly a female voice sounded. It was the woman standing beside Luo Xia. "That should be my lecture, right?" Lai Yunqing smiled. Lai Yunqing was 28 years old, the youngest associate professor in Continent K, and also the deputy director of the 10,000 Computing Institute. "Are you Professor Lai?" Tseng Su was also very surprised that Lai Yunqing would be so young and beautiful. He was a bit incoherent. You are really young and beautiful and also very powerful." Bei Yunj glanced at Tseng Su and knew that she wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. Lai Yunqing glanced at Bei Yunj and smiled gracefully. "It seems that this gentleman is more interested in my studies than this lady. Our miss is still young, so we're just bringing her here for a tour." Tseng Su nodded his head like he was pecking at rice. He looked at Lai Yunqing as if he was looking at his idol. Lai Yunqing raised her eyebrows and said thoughtfully, "Yes, but I've already finished college when I was 20. Tseng Su didn't notice anything wrong and just chatted with Lai Yunqing. Luo Xia looked at Bei Yunj and suddenly asked, "Since Miss Pei is interested in computers, why don't you sit in on the class at K Continent Academy?" Tseng Su looked like a parent from Bei Yunj. His eyes lit up as he asked excitedly, "Really?" Bei Yunj was speechless. "This." Lai Yunqing's smile froze. She looked at Luo Xia, not understanding what he meant. Luo Xia glanced at Lai Yunqing. He didn't intend to tell Lai Yunqing that Bei Yunj was brought here by Huashidu. In Continent K and Country R, Huashidu usually only brought Zhouyu with him, so no one recognized Tseng Su. Luo Xia seemed to have thought of something and chuckled. "Consider it as giving me face." End of chapter. Chapter 1032. Lai Yunqing's eyes flashed and she regained her smile. "Since you say so, I can only agree." Her tone was relaxed. "However, if Miss Pei performs well, I can also write a recommendation letter for you. In the future, better universities will still give me some face." Hearing this, Bei Yunj glanced at Lai Yunqing leisurely. Her beautiful eyes seemed to be able to see through all her thoughts. Bei Yunj sneered indifferently. Tseng Su was speechless. It was not harmful, but it was extremely insulting. Indeed. Bei Yunj did not say a word, but Lai Yunqing's expression did not look too good. Assistant Tseng, my patience is limited. Bei Yunj turned to look at Tseng Su. There was a hint of coldness in her beautiful eyes. Tseng Su was speechless. Looking at this scene, Luoxia did not expect Tseng Su to be afraid of Bei Yunj. Miss Pei, people can't rely on others all their lives. Isn't it a good thing to work hard for yourself? Luoxia asked in an unpleasant tone. He did not understand why Huashidu would fall for such a woman. Dr. Luo. Bei Yunj smiled lazily. Her tone was gentle, but her bright eyes were wild and arrogant. I'm not working hard. I'm leaving some space for others to show off. These words made Luoxia's handsome face sink. He did not understand why Bei Yunj dared to say such things. Lai Yunqing glanced at Luoxia and smiled. Is that so? It seems that Miss Pei must have some outstanding points. Why don't you show it to everyone? Hearing this, Bei Yunj looked at Lai Yunqing with interest. Only animals in heat will constantly show off their advantages. Tseng Su was speechless. Luoxia was speechless. Lai Yunqing's face turned green. Fortunately, not long after, someone urged Lai Yunqing to attend the lecture. In the end, they could only leave on bad terms. At the lecture, in the last row, Tseng Su also understood this matter. It was not practical for Bei Yunj to make friends, but it was much easier to make enemies. Miss Pei, do you have any friends? Tseng Su asked tentatively. Lai Yunqing was such a mature and gentle woman, and she was also a super god. She had enthusiastically said that she wanted to write a recommendation letter for Bei Yunj, but Bei Yunj was unmoved. Bei Yunj's hand froze in the middle of writing the report. However, just as Bei Yunj looked up and was about to speak, Lai Yunqing suddenly said from the stage. This time I see that many of you have brought a computer. Let me teach you a little trick to warm up. Lai Yunqing looked at everyone and smiled. Everyone should be interested in deciphering the computer, right? When the students below the stage heard this, they began to discuss excitedly. Professor Lai, is it difficult to decipher a computer? Generally, those with strong computer skills would be able to decipher computers. However, the students in the audience were all freshmen, so it was inevitable that they were curious. It's not that difficult. Lai Yunqing smiled gently. Currently, the best computer defense system is a new product developed by the Higgins Group. Last month I went to their research team to observe. They are indeed very impressive. The students below the stage started to jeer. Then the professor will definitely be able to crack it. As long as it is a system made by humans, it is not invulnerable. Lai Yunqing said confidently. Then she raised her voice and asked, then, which student is willing to lend me a computer so that I can give everyone a demonstration? The female student in the last row? Everyone turned their heads and their eyes fell on Bei Yunj. P.S. Continue tonight. Thank you for your monthly tickets. End of chapter. Chapter 1033. Bei Yunj saved the report and looked at her unhurriedly. Bei Yunj felt Lai Yunqing's gaze lingering on her for a long time. It seemed to have something to do with Luoxia. Don't worry, I won't destroy your computer. I'm just giving everyone a demonstration. Lai Yunqing smiled and said, if it's damaged, I'll pay you 3 times the amount. You don't mind, right? Everyone looked at Professor Lai with eyes full of admiration. After all, she was an associate professor at Continent K's academy at the age of 28. Tseng Su's expression froze when he heard this. Bei Yunj wasn't a kind person. How could she be expected to do good deeds? However, out of his expectation, Bei Yunj chuckled and said leisurely, I don't mind. I can't stop you from invading the system. Tseng Su was speechless. He didn't know why, but he felt that Miss Pei's gentle demeanor made her seem like a bad person. But Professor Lai, are you sure you want to choose my computer? It doesn't have a good temper. Bei Yunj looked at the computer on her lap thoughtfully. Bei Yunj had been working on the program for a week in order to design the most accurate robot system. Although she had experience with the basic program in her previous life, Bei Yunj had been improving the system from time to time in order to achieve a high level of precision. Tseng Su felt that Bei Yunj's words were a little strange, but he couldn't tell why. Lai Yunqing thought that Bei Yunj was deliberately mystifying things and smiled. Since you don't mind, Miss Pei can bring it up. Bei Yunj let Tseng Su bring her to the stage. Tseng Su was well versed in the ways of the world. In order to prevent unnecessary accidents, Tseng Su stayed by Bei Yunj's computer. This was Miss Pei's computer. If anything went wrong, Tseng Su was afraid that Bei Yunj would smash the entire lecture hall. At this moment, Bei Yunj was sitting in the last row. She was bored to death as she scrolled through the group chat of the research institute. She saw a few research institutes gossiping. They said that Continent K's computer scientists were gathering. Something might have happened. Bei Yunj glanced at it and continued to read the documents. On the stage, Lai Yunqing saw Luoxia in the first row and his gaze swept across the last row. His gaze sank. She didn't know why, but she had a feeling that Luoxia's attitude towards Bei Yunj was a little strange. As a result, she was targeting a junior for no reason. If it was in the past, she would also laugh at her own behavior. But now, she couldn't wait any longer. Lai Yunqing's eyes flashed. Then she switched the projection screen to her computer. He wanted to show everyone how he operated it. However, when Lai Yunqing saw the HG logo on Bei Yunj's computer, she frowned. Higgins? However, she remembered that Higgins' latest product didn't include this computer. Even the top-notch configuration sold in auctions was not of this design. A hint of mockery appeared in Lai Yunqing's eyes. Students, the computer system configuration is different, so the difficulty of our hacking will also be different. For example, it would take an expert hacker more than 7 hours to hack into a top-notch computer product of a large enterprise. As for the average random brand, it can be dealt with in 10 minutes. Lai Yunqing started to operate the computer and smiled elegantly. With the configuration of this student's computer, it can be hacked in about 10 minutes. She was saying that Bei Yunj's computer was a random brand. End of chapter. Chapter 1034. When Lai Yunqing said this, she did not notice that the red light on the computer beside her had flashed twice. Zheng Su heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Bei Yunj, who was in the last row, did not seem angry. But then, after Lai Yunqing invaded for a few minutes, the confident smile on her face froze. What was going on? She could have succeeded just now. Why couldn't she attack? Lai Yunqing's expression did not change, but her hands sped up. Everyone could see the code appearing crazily on the screen. However, 10 minutes had passed, and Professor Lai still had not attacked this inferior computer. Suddenly, everyone heard the crisp sound of a mechanical system. Undesirable intrusion detected. Please activate the following mode. At the same time. Not far away, a few options popped up on Bei Yunj's cell phone. A. Automatic lock tracking mode. B. Anti-intrusion mode. C. Automatic alarm mode. D. Automatic processing mode. Bei Yunj casually clicked A. Then, under everyone's horrified gazes, little G's mechanical voice continued to enter their ears. Okay, automatic processing mode has been selected. Bei Yunj, who had stopped reading the documents, did not understand little G's rebellion. Soon, Bei Yunj suddenly remembered that back then, Si Qingyan had complained that this system was not enough for Bei Yunj and had taken the initiative to help personalize the system. But now, Bei Yunj had a strong feeling. Although the robot system had a mandatory ban that could stop all system orders. However, once such a ban was issued, the system would return to its factory settings. In other words, everything would be reset. Bei Yunj thought about it and only planned to watch the show. At the same time, she wanted to understand what Si Qingyan thought of her. The others did not expect to see an artificial intelligence and a computer science professor fight today. Just as Bei Yunj's order was issued, everyone suddenly saw Bei Yunj's computer screen light up and a series of codes appeared. Then, on the big screen, Lai Yunqing's computer screen suddenly turned black. Lai Yunqing's expression changed. What? Her computer had been counterlocked. The students below the stage pointed and discussed. They could not believe that this inferior computer could lock Lai Yunqing's computer without anyone controlling it. However, the lecture was still going on. Lai Yunqing had no choice but to calm down. She bit her lip, looked at Luoxia below the stage and continued to control of the computer. A few minutes later, Lai Yunqing's computer suddenly returned to normal. Lai Yunqing heaved a sigh of relief and prepared for the next round of hacking to save face. When Luoxia saw this scene, he could not help but turn to look at the last row. He only saw Bei Yunj watching with interest as if she was not worried at all. Just as expected. Suddenly, when the students and professors in the audience saw what happened next, they were so shocked that they were boiling with excitement. Following Lai Yunqing's computer screen, lines of text appeared on the big screen, revealing little Greg's strong resentment. You're the inferior's computer. Your whole family is made of inferior computers. Everyone. This computer must have become a spirit. Bei Yunj, she shouldn't have installed those 27 miniature pinhole cameras. Lai Yunqing, whose face was pale, received a series of bullying warnings from little G. Is your system very powerful? Everyone? Question mark. Lai Yunqing's computer suddenly turned blue. End of chapter. Chapter 1035. Is your CPU very powerful? As soon as little G's mechanical voice fell, everyone saw that Lai Yunqing's computer had completely collapsed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Is your heat dissipation very good? Then, everyone saw that the code on the computer that no one was controlling was flying faster. Soon, Lai Yunqing's computer started to smoke and the entire computer was paralyzed. Lai Yunqing's face was ashen. She could only stand rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do with the artificial intelligence's counterattack. Bei Yunj. Fortunately, the system had not been installed in the robot. Otherwise, Bei Yunj did not doubt that this little thing would take a hammer and smash Lai Yunqing's computer. However, then, little G's behavior was still very erratic. It was unknown which of the 27 cameras was recording Lai Yunqing's dark face. Suddenly, Lai Yunqing's face appeared on the projection screen. Little G's crisp and tender mechanical voice sounded as expected. Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? As soon as she finished speaking, there were a few professors and students with laptops in their hands. Their laptops were coldly turned on the sound effects. The same mechanical voice sounded one after another. Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? At first, it was only the laptops on the field, but then it was the phones in everyone's pockets. It was still not very harmful, but it was extremely humiliating. Lai Yunqing's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and her entire body was trembling. The others felt their scalps go numb. This artificial intelligence had become a demon? Tsing Su was also terrified. He instinctively stayed away from this computer that had become a demon. Miss Pei was not to be trifled with, and neither was Miss Pei's computer. Bei Yunj felt that something was wrong. Her eyebrows twitched, and she stood up in time to walk to the podium. Little G stopped the command. As soon as Bei Yunj's voice was recognized, Little G suddenly became obedient. Roger that, Master. Moi, Master, Bei Yunj. What did Si Qingyan mean by this setting? At this moment, everyone else's computers and phones returned to normal, as if it was just a dream. However, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. They knew that the scene just now was real. Bei Yunj turned to look at Lai Yunqing's broken computer and raised her eyebrows. I'm sorry. I told you that it has a bad temper. I'll pay you back 3 times the price. Everyone, this was indeed the first time they had encountered a bad-tempered computer. Wasn't this computer too awesome? Just one word of inferior brand, and the computer crashed on the spot? What kind of computer is this? Lai Yunqing didn't look too good, but she still asked expressionlessly. One could faintly hear the unwillingness in his voice. Professor Lai doesn't understand AI either? Bei Yunj asked with interest. Artificial intelligence? Lai Yunqing's tone was filled with disbelief. She had never thought that AI would have developed to this extent. Assistant Tseng, the lecture is almost over. Bei Yunj glanced at his watch and said to Tseng Su. When Tseng Su heard this, he walked over to Bei Yunj's computer and touched it tentatively. He didn't dare to hug it. Miss Pei, is it in a good mood now? Bei Yunj, after leaving. The people in the lecture hall were in an uproar. It's amazing. That computer is too cool? Even Professor Lai can't handle it. Is artificial intelligence so powerful? Then one day will these things really replace us? P.S. Si Qingyan said that little G was modified according to Master Pei's personality. Does little G's attitude towards Master Pei look like Master Pei's attitude towards everyone? Think carefully. She scrolled through the comments and saw someone saying that Master Pei was not doing her job. Master Du had too many scenes? The second person didn't respond. I think it's all right. If they felt that Master Du had too many scenes, they could skip it or give up on the article. Firstly, Master Pei had been doing her research. However, in terms of settings, Master Pei was already at the maximum level, although she did have a huge breakthrough in the later stages. If one went further up the peak of scientific research, it would inevitably be sci-fi. After all, hundreds of years ago, not many people would have imagined the information age and smart homes. These were all the results of scientific researchers. Hence, in the later stages, Master Pei's research career would involve some sci-fi elements, but not much. End of chapter. Chapter 1036. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Look, even Professor Lai lost to this computer. Many students were talking about it, making Lai Yunqing's face turn pale. On the way, Tseng Su sighed. Miss Pei, your computer is so similar to your temper. Bei Yunj was speechless. Suddenly, Bei Yunj was about to get into the car when Tseng Su carefully held the computer in his arms and a mechanical voice sounded. Bad intrusion detected. Target intercepted. Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. If it was a normal intrusion, little G would ask her how to deal with it. Only when it was a dangerous intrusion would little G automatically intercept the intrusion. Tseng Su was so frightened by little G's sudden voice that his hands almost trembled. Bei Yunj's voice was cold. Find out the reason. As soon as she finished speaking, Bei Yunj placed the laptop on the short table in the car. Soon she saw the data that little G had analyzed automatically. Successfully tracked the IP address data. The range is Aichenli Castle. The intruder is an intruder. There are 7 intruders from the same organization. The area Bei Yunj was in was Aichenli Castle. It was a place where top research universities gathered. The organization behind the attack on such an area probably had an ulterior motive. Miss Pei, what's going on? Tseng Su was stunned. He had a feeling that Miss Pei was more powerful than he had imagined. Where's Luoxia? Call Luoxia or Lai Yinqing over. After Bei Yunj finished speaking, Tseng Su hurriedly ran off to call them. At this moment, Bei Yunj called Zhong Xinglin. Hello, Gur? How's Continent K? Are you having fun? Zhong Xinglin asked with a smile. Old master, someone is infiltrating Aichenli Castle in Continent K. Has the Academy of Continent K done any major research recently? Zhong Xinglin's smile froze when he heard Bei Yunj's question. What? How did you know? I was wandering around the Academy of Continent K and they targeted me. Bei Yunj said slowly. She had seen similar things in her previous life. Most people might find it unbelievable, but Bei Yunj knew very well that every major research by researchers would attract attention and danger from all over the world. Zhong Xinglin did not expect Bei Yunj to be involved in such a thing. He massaged the space between his eyebrows. I heard that the investigation in Continent K has been very strict recently. It seems like something is going to happen. They're still gathering top computational technology researchers to prepare for a meeting. Nothing in the industry could be hidden from them, who had been in the industry for decades. It was just that there were some things that everyone was used to turning a blind eye to for peace and quiet. You're not planning to interfere in this matter, are you? Zhong Xinglin was somewhat worried. Old master, if their major research is about genetic data, microbial experiments, and so on? Are you really going to let me go? Bei Yunj asked with great interest. Zhong Xinglin was speechless. Bei Yunj seemed to be an indifferent person, but ever since Meng Liang held her hand and entered the laboratory in her previous life, Bei Yunj understood the responsibility of a researcher better than anyone else. Most of the panic in the world came from battles. And the most fatal battle of all mankind might just be a single genetic data leak. Not long after, Zhong Xinglin called and confirmed that a professor in the Academy of Continent K had made a major breakthrough in genetics. Bei Yunj's eyes darkened. She closed the car door and typed on the keyboard. End of chapter. Chapter 1037. Not long after, Bei Yunj entered the K Continent Academy's website. Old master, does the K Continent Academy have any security alarms? Bei Yunj asked. Zhong Xinglin was stunned. You went in just like that? To be honest, even he felt his scalp go numb when he heard Bei Yunj's hacking speed. That was too fast. How could the K Continent Academy's security system be like a piece of tofu to Bei Yunj? Was it just a piece of tofu? Yeah. I remember that when K University system was hacked more than 10 years ago, there was an alarm system that would go off. But this time, the hacker must have a good understanding of K University so they might not trigger the alarm. Bei Yunj thought for a moment before the corners of her lips suddenly curled up into a casual and unrestrained smile. They won't, but I will. Zhong Xinglin had a bad feeling. A few minutes later, Bei Yunj's fingers moved even faster on the keyboard and hacked the entire system. In an instant, Bei Yunj accurately triggered the alarm system. A beam of light shot out from the top of a tall tower not far away and circled around the school. The alarm went off. Everyone in the K Continent Academy noticed it. Someone was hacking their school's system. On the other side of Fort Aikenley, 7 people were still hacking. Boss, the K Continent Academy isn't that powerful. We've been hacking for so long but no one noticed us. Someone couldn't help but say smugly. That person smirked. Don't be careless. Let's get the thing first. Once we're done, we'll throw a celebration party. What's wrong with that? The K Continent Academy is just a bunch of good-looking but useless idiots. The rest of us can't even compare to them. Brothers, let's just get this over with. The other person's tone was sarcastic, and his eyes showed that he was determined to win. After all, this was a meticulous plan. They didn't think there was any possibility of failure. However, the moment he said that, their computer screen suddenly showed that the system had crashed. They didn't even have time to hide their smiles before their eyes widened in shock. Who hacked the K-Continent Academy system? K-Continent Academy's security system was created by a top hacker in the early years. Even if it was them, they would only dare to invade the loopholes of the K-Continent Academy. But now, someone had actually hacked the entire system? The 7 of them were stunned at first. They couldn't figure out which immortal had done this. However, the sudden sound of the alarm made them lose the mood to continue thinking. The leader of the group of 7 stood up abruptly. "Didn't I tell you? They have an alarm and told you not to trigger it." "Who triggered the alarm?" The pale-skinned young man roared in a hoarse voice as if he was gnashing his teeth. The people from K-Continent Academy had long been on guard against them. Once the alarm went off, their chances of success would drop by at least half. "I didn't trigger the alarm." "Me neither. Boss, could it be that someone else triggered the alarm?" Someone muttered in a low voice. Hearing this, only then did the pale-skinned youth recall that someone had hacked into the K-Continent Academy system. But why would that person trigger the alarm if he could hack the Academy system so discreetly? They could not understand. Then someone guessed, could it be that someone is deliberately showing off to the K-Continent Academy, hacking the school system and deliberately triggering the alarm? Wasn't this behavior too arrogant? Chapter 1038. But why did it have to be at this time? All of a sudden, they had a bold idea. Someone wanted to make them the scapegoat. The faces of the few of them instantly turned ugly. "B-boss, can we still get the information?" The young man's expression turned ugly. He glanced at them and quickly started typing on the keyboard. But not long after, the young man realized one thing. His location had been counter-tracked. In an instant, the young man's expression darkened. This was also the first time he realized that there was actually someone who could suppress him to the point that he had no room to fight back in this aspect. He couldn't stop the other party's intrusion at all. If this continued, they would definitely be exposed. "Retreat." The young man gritted his teeth and said unwillingly. The others heard this and felt their scalps tingle. Who was this person who could force their boss to retreat? At the same time, Bei Yunj was still holding a candy wrapper in her hand. She leaned against the back seat with interest and slowly checked the other party's computer. Those who didn't know better would think that she was browsing through her own documents. Bei Yunj didn't intend to track the other party's location. She flipped through the documents and turned off the computer after confirming that the other party hadn't achieved his goal. At this moment, someone knocked on the car window. Bei Yunj had just opened the car door when she heard Seng Su say, "Miss Pei, Dr. Luo is here. Why are you looking for me?" Luo Xie's tone was cold and his expression looked as if someone owed him a few hundred yuan. Bei Yunj looked up at Luo Xie and smiled lazily. "Dr. Luo, is there a bar near the K-Continent Academy?" Luo Xie couldn't hold back his expression. Seng Su's smile froze. Miss Pei looked so serious just now. He thought that she had something important to ask Dr. Luo. In the end, she just wanted to ask Dr. Luo where a bar was? Miss Pei. Seng Su was on the verge of tears. If Master Du knew that Miss Pei went to a bar, his year-end bonus for the next few years would be gone. Luo Xie's expression was gloomy as he said word by word, "Hopeless." As soon as he finished speaking, Lai Yunqing walked to Luo Xie's side and said gently, "Luo Xie, accompany me to the conference room. Something happened in the hospital." Luo Xie suppressed his anger and took a deep breath. "Okay." After that, Luo Xie glanced at Bei Yunj and chuckled. "Miss Pei, see you tomorrow." Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. She still didn't understand what Luo Xie meant. In the conference hall, when Luo Xie and Lai Yunqing arrived, they found that the atmosphere was heavy. Many people were computer experts. "Professor Lai, please take a seat." The dean rubbed his forehead. His scalp still felt numb when he thought about what had just happened. Something very serious happened today. I'm sure everyone can guess what it is. He took a deep breath. Someone hacked our system. Hearing this, the people in the seats were like ants on a hot pan, discussing animatedly. Not long after, someone said, "Dean, since you've asked us to do this, of course we want to help. But there was actually someone who could hack into the K-Continent Academy system. This is too ridiculous. This person is definitely not simple." Someone immediately chimed in, "Yeah, this system was created by the first Busaka Prize winner, Hesselink. After so many years, who can surpass him? P.S. At least 4 chapters today. Also, Old Sue has been sending you red packets for a week. End of chapter. Chapter 1039. If they hadn't seen the system being hacked with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that such a person existed. Thinking of this, their scalps went numb. Someone broke down mentally. Director, if the opponent is already at this stage, we can't guard against it. Today, Continent K Academy had only gathered hundreds of computer experts. But even if Continent K Academy could invite Marcus from Country R and Zhong Xinglin from Country A, they might not be able to guard against it. Suddenly, Lai Yunqing finished observing the hacked website and said, Director, the person who hacked the system is not that group of people. What? How do you know? The others quickly looked at Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing smiled. I fought with that group of people before. The person who hacked the system might have deliberately triggered the alarm system. Hearing this, everyone reacted. That meant that there was a big shot helping them behind the scenes? Everyone was ecstatic and their desire to ride on someone's coattails grew stronger. Who was helping them behind the scenes? The others were also discussing excitedly. When did such a ruthless person appear in Continent K? Below the stage, a person appeared in Luoxia's mind. But it shouldn't be possible to come to Continent K silently. Thinking of this, Luoxia's heart felt empty. Professor Lai, you know many people in the industry. Do you know the person who is helping us secretly? After someone asked this question, everyone's gaze fell on Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing smiled. Senior helping us secretly means that he doesn't want to show his face. However, I know that Mr. Nancy from Country R has recently come to Continent K. Mr. Nancy? The founder of Higgins? Instantly the crowd was in an uproar. They looked at Lai Yunqing with even more envy. Lai Yunqing was too lucky. She even knew a retired top big shot like Nancy? That's right. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Nancy before. My father is his student. This time I can try to contact Mr. Nancy. Lai Yunqing smiled faintly. Mr. Nancy should be able to help us. Hearing this, everyone looked at Lai Yunqing with more admiration and envy. Lai Yunqing was also used to such a halo. She subconsciously looked at the absent-minded Luoxia and couldn't help but smile. Inside the manor, Bei Yunj had just returned home when she received a phone call. Max, where are you now? The caller was K, the founder of the Chaos. What happened? Bei Yunj asked lazily. Are you in Continent K? Something strange happened in K Continent today. Someone hacked into the K Continent Academy system. K was shocked. Bei Yunj couldn't help but ask, can't I? This is a system created by the first Busaka Prize winner, Hesselink. For so many years, no one dared to challenge him. After saying that, K sighed inexplicably. Okay, I got it. Then it shouldn't be you. I thought you were in cahoots with the terrorists and wanted to persuade you to turn back. Bei Yunj. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Wait. Before K could finish, Bei Yunj hung up. K, didn't he say that he would hang up if there was nothing else? Meanwhile, Bei Yunj turned her head, thinking that the footsteps just now were because someone had returned. She didn't expect it to be Zhou. Bei Yunj's smile disappeared and Zhou felt a chill down his spine. End of chapter. Chapter 1040. Miss Pei. Zhou had been in Continent K for so many years. Other than Huashidu, Bei Yunj was the first person who gave him a strong sense of oppression. Where is my brother? Bei Yunj's voice was clear. When Huashidu was not around, it sounded cold. Zhou said, Master Du will be back later today. He wants you to eat early and rest well. Bei Yunj glanced at him indifferently and went upstairs. Okay. Zhou's back was already covered in cold sweat. Old Zhou, why did you come back first? Seng Su asked curiously. Master Du asked me to come over and tell Miss Pei. Zhou suddenly remembered. Alright, find time to give me Miss Pei's math homework. Seng Su was speechless. The next day, Bei Yunj went downstairs and sat under the huge European-style window. She chewed on her bread and looked at the rose garden outside. When Seng Su walked over, Bei Yunj asked slowly, Brother left again? Seng Su immediately explained, Miss Pei, Master Du did have something urgent to attend to these 2 days. However, Master Du will come and fetch you after your health checkup. Bei Yunj paused. Health checkup? Yes, Master Du has been planning to bring you to Dr. Luo for a long time. Seng Su nodded vigorously. Dr. Luo is very skilled in medicine, especially in psychotherapy. I'm not free. Bei Yunj rejected him perfunctorily. I still have to study. Sang Su thought for a while and could only call Huashidu in front of Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj suddenly stood up and glanced at Sang Su casually. She said with a faint smile, I'll go and change. Sang Su, who felt threatened, said, Thank you, Miss Pei. Bei Yunj arrived at Luoxia's laboratory. In the laboratory, 4 or 5 researchers were chatting. Do you think there are any other beautiful girls in our circle besides Professor Lai? Damn, what a beautiful girl. Suddenly someone exclaimed. Hearing this, the other person rolled his eyes. Come on, what kind of beauty can there be in this godforsaken place? Before he could finish his sentence, the researcher turned around and saw that Bei Yunj had taken off her hat. Her slender, fair fingers casually brushed her loose black hair. Her beautiful eyes were unruly and bright, and they were dazzling. Wasn't this lady too beautiful? Assistant Tseng. Some people were stunned when they saw Tseng Su. Tseng Su smiled and looked at Bei Yunj. Miss Pei, this is Dr. Luo's laboratory. Bei Yunj glanced at her and responded indifferently. She then sat down on the sofa in the lounge area. The others were discussing wildly. It can't be? Are you here to look for Boss? Boss, don't you like her? How could he know such a beautiful girl? If you put this face in the entertainment industry, you'll be beaten to a pulp. Everyone hadn't finished talking when Luoxia and Lai Yunqing came in together. This made the people who usually thought that Lai Yunqing had the halo of a goddess suddenly feel that Lai Yunqing's goddess halo was unusually dim today. Miss Pei is here too? The smile on Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. Come with me. Luoxia only threw this sentence at her before he changed into his white coat and walked into a private room. Bei Yunj had just stood up when Sang Su followed her closely. Sang Su was still on guard. After all, their Miss Pei was so beautiful. Although Dr. Luo hated Miss Pei, he couldn't help but find her face more and more pleasing to the eye. Chapter 1041. Bei Yunj couldn't be bothered to say anything else and walked straight into the room. Yunqing, you guys go out first. Luoxia gestured for Bei Yunj to sit opposite him and spoke. But Tseng Su was worried. After all, they were alone. Assistant Tseng, do you want to check for me? Luoxia's tone was unfriendly. Lai Yunqing immediately smiled and said, Assistant Tseng, let's go out first. Don't worry. After the others left, Luoxia asked without looking up, Do you have any medical history? Yes. Bei Yunj leaned back lazily. I stayed in a mental hospital for a period of time. Luoxia. He never thought that Huashidu would have such a person by his side. Luoxia took a deep breath. Does Huashidu know? Bei Yunj smiled unruly. He was the one who picked me up from the mental hospital. Luoxia couldn't describe his feelings at this moment. What kind of medicine do you usually use? Luoxia didn't understand Huashidu's thoughts, but at the same time, he couldn't tell that Bei Yunj was actually someone from a mental hospital. Dr. Luo, tell me how much it costs to end this conversation, Bei Yunj said unhurriedly. These words made Luoxia's thoughts stop for a few seconds. He smiled slightly. Do I lack money? Your medical equipment should have been used for a long time, right? Our nation's Medical Research Institute has produced a batch of new medical equipment in batches. This stunned Luoxia for a moment. Of course, he knew that the medical equipment of our nation's Medical Research Institute was developed by them. However, because it wasn't widely available on the market, he couldn't get those equipment for the time being. Miss Pei, is your channel really your own channel? Luoxia's tone couldn't hide the sarcasm. He was certain that she wanted Huashidu to help. Bei Yunj only glanced at him leisurely. If Dr. Luo wants it, you have to listen to me. Luoxia looked at Bei Yunj for a long time and said slowly, Bei Yunj, you don't seem to want Huashidu to know about your condition. What? Bei Yunj's eyes moved slightly and she only glanced at him. Dr. Luo, think about it. There are only 2 sets of medical equipment. With that said, the conversation was over. Luoxia had just gone out when Lai Yunqing hurriedly approached in high heels. Luoxia, she has already arrived at the airport. Come with me to pick her up. Listen to Yen. Luoxia replied, all right. Then he turned to Bei Yunj and said, I will think about Miss Pei's matter again. Something happened at the K-Continent Academy recently and I have to go out. I'll have to trouble Miss Pei to wait here. Do you need help? Bei Yunj asked with a rare smile. At this time she didn't mind Luoxia owing her a favor. Lai Yunqing smiled and said, Miss Pei shouldn't be able to help us. This time we are going to pick up an important person. He doesn't like insignificant people. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows but didn't say anything. Airport. Lai Yunqing looked at Luoxia with a sweet expression. Luoxia, thank you for accompanying me. You're welcome. Luoxia suddenly asked, I heard that Mr. Nancy has a good relationship with the Computing Institute? Yes, Zhong Xinglin seems to have attended Mr. Nancy's class in the past. After Lai Yunqing finished speaking, she saw Nancy walking out of the airport with a few bodyguards behind him. Mr. Nancy. Lai Yunqing hurriedly walked over and started to exchange greetings. I haven't seen you in a long time. I didn't expect you to come to K Continent personally. Nancy frowned subconsciously. He didn't know who he had sent the last voice message to, but he was as irritable as thunder. Try not to come and see me. If you don't come and see me, I don't want you to care about me in the future. Chapter 1042. After shouting, Nancy still felt that it wasn't enough and fiercely said, Hurry up and go back with me. You're not allowed to stay here. After speaking, Luoxia and Lai Yunqing were both stunned. They suddenly wondered who could make Mr. Nancy so irritable. Nancy's anger hadn't subsided. He glanced at Lai Yunqing and Luoxia and his tone became cold, making people feel alienated. Why are you looking for me? Lai Yunqing smiled and said, Mr. Nancy, have you booked a place to stay? If not, how about I accompany you to the K Continent Academy? I don't have time. I'm here to catch someone. Nancy chuckled and gritted his teeth. Bei Yunj, this guy who knew how many people in K Continent were eyeing her covetously. He actually came to K Continent? If Zhong Xinglin hadn't said yesterday that the person who hacked the K Continent Academy system was Bei Yunj, he wouldn't have known that this little bastard had come to K Continent. Catch someone? Lai Yunqing's smile stiffened. Facing this old man who once stood at the top of this circle was indeed a lot of pressure. Although she was called by many seniors, she could see that Nancy didn't want to talk about his personal affairs. Lai Yunqing quickly changed the topic and smiled. You just arrived here. I'm afraid you won't be able to find him for a while. Lai Yunqing had already promised that she would definitely bring Nancy to the K Continent Academy. Of course, she didn't want to slap her own face. She bit her lip and insisted, Mr. Nancy, there have been many seminars recently. In everyone's heart, you are an unsurpassable senior. They definitely want to see you. And what if there is an unexpected gain? Lai Yunqing actually wanted to learn from Nancy. After all, Nancy's achievements in computing were even more outstanding than Zhong Xinglin and Marcus. However, Nancy said that he would never accept students in his life. What's there to not surpass? Nancy just laughed casually, but Lai Yunqing thought that Nancy was being modest. Your achievements in this life, if you didn't leave later, you could completely match Hesselink. If it was before, Nancy would be unhappy to hear this. But now Nancy smiled. I can't match him, but there will always be someone who can, or even surpass him. After that, Nancy walked forward and Lai Yunqing was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand what Nancy meant. Surpass? Surpass Hesselink? Lai Yunqing only felt that it was absurd and impossible. But at this time, Nancy had already agreed to take a look at the K Continent Academy. In the car, Nancy was still persistently calling for people to die. Lai Yunqing and Luo squinted at Nancy, who had been on the phone for more than 20 minutes. They admired the person who didn't answer the phone. A few minutes later, the call went through. In Luoxia's laboratory, Bei Yunj was lazily playing with the computer. Master, my phone ran out of battery just now. What's the matter? Nancy's face almost collapsed from anger. Do you think I'm a fool? Don't think I don't know that you're deliberately ignoring me. How would I dare? Bei Yunj's lazy tone was also faint. The other people in the laboratory couldn't help but look at Bei Yunj with distressed expressions. Which Zhou Renpi was this? How could he be so fierce to this Miss Shen Yan? Nancy was still angry. He smiled faintly. You don't dare? I'm at the K Continent Academy now. If you don't come to pick me up later, I won't leave. I'll go on a hunger strike here. Bei Yunj, end of chapter. Chapter 1043. Bei Yunj's eyebrows twitched. Why are you going to K Continent Academy for no reason? You can go, but I can't? Nancy snorted and said domineeringly, I'll give you an hour. You must appear in front of me. With that said, Nancy hung up the phone. Bei Yunj was speechless. In the laboratory, Tseng Su asked, Miss, what happened? Bei Yunj put her phone back into her pocket and pressed her white hat on her hair. I'm going to K Continent Academy to pick someone up. Half an hour later, Nancy appeared at K Continent Academy. The school leaders were at the entrance. It really is Nancy? Even the dean sucked in a breath of cold air. When Lai Yunqing saw this, the corners of her lips curled up. She turned around and said to Nancy in a voice that was neither loud nor soft, "We're here. Thank you for coming with me." When the others heard this, they looked at Lai Yunqing even more fervently. Nancy actually gave Lai Yunqing face and came to K-Continent Academy? Nancy glanced at Lai Yunqing and didn't say anything. He just stood beside Luoxia naturally. As for the calm Luoxia, he was inexplicably nervous when he saw this god that the scientific research world couldn't surpass. Lai Yunqing didn't show any embarrassment on her face and just followed beside Nancy. "Mr. Nancy, it's an honor to meet you. It's really the blessing of K-Continent Academy to be able to come and guide you after you retire." The director was so excited that he was almost incoherent, let alone the others. Nancy's status in the industry could be said to be an unshakable legend. Switching to scientific research at the age of 20 and winning the Busaka Prize at the age of 30. Anyone would think that this was cheating. Nancy frowned and glanced at him indifferently. "Director, you're too polite. I'm just taking a look around." "Then, come with me to the office first. I've already prepared afternoon tea." Nancy's face was expressionless, but he soon nodded. He was indeed tired from rushing from Neely to Yuncheng and then to K-Continent. "The rest of you go to the conference room and wait," the director said happily. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but discuss after the director and the others left. Was it really Lai Yunqing who invited him? Then her connections are too terrifying. Otherwise, how could it be you? Lai Yunqing is really a goddess. If I was so familiar with Mr. Nancy, I would have taken it out to show off. But what about her? He was humble and low-key and didn't say anything. Exactly. If I can get acquainted with Mr. Nancy, I can brag about it for the rest of my life. Yunqing, thank you for bringing Mr. Nancy here. The dean's tone was amiable. It's nothing. It's what I should do. Lai Yunqing chuckled. Besides, Grandpa Nancy is actually very easy to talk to. Isn't it because you have a good relationship? Mr. Nancy gave you face. The dean continued, Yunqing, if I can get Mr. Nancy to help us, we can only rely on you. But, Lai Yunqing's smile froze as she hesitated. No buts, only you can say that in front of Nancy. Lai Yunqing could only agree to try. After all, even if Nancy didn't give her face, she wouldn't give anyone else face either. A short while later, Lai Yunqing walked in front of Nancy with a troubled expression. Actually, Mr. Nancy, I'm looking for you this time to ask for help. Our Academy K has been targeted by criminals. Last time, someone deliberately hacked the system. Nancy quickly looked up at her with a cold gaze. Deliberately hacked the system? Lai Yunqing realized that she had said something wrong, but still forced a smile. You can't be using the Academy K's system to practice, right? Nancy's voice was even colder and his tone was sarcastic. Don't you know that I don't like to meddle in other people's business? When he left this circle, he was completely disappointed with it. Now that he looked at it, it hadn't changed at all. If he didn't know that it was Bei Yunj who did it, he would have believed her. Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. She didn't expect Nancy to reject her so directly. If you're looking for me for this purpose, I can leave now. Nancy's tone was cold. Lai Yunqing immediately panicked. I'm sorry, I didn't know that you don't like to meddle in other people's business. Nancy only glanced at Lai Yunqing. Although he didn't say anything, it didn't mean that he didn't know what this girl was thinking. He just turned a blind eye. There was no need to embarrass the younger generation. Outside the door. How was it? Did Mr. Nancy agree? The dean asked agitatedly. Lai Yunqing hid the embarrassed expression on her face and shook her head again. The corners of her mouth curled into a helpless arc. Dean, it's not like you don't know Grandpa Nancy's temper. No matter who tries to persuade him, it won't work. When the dean heard this, his body froze. Then what should we do? Dean, it's not easy for Grandpa Nancy to come here. Lai Yunqing sighed helplessly. At the same time, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the entrance of the Academy K when she called Nancy, wanting to ask him to come out. Unexpectedly, Nancy insisted that she go in to look for him. Miss Pei, doesn't the person you want to pick up want to come out? Sung Su couldn't help but ask. Bei Yunj sneered lazily. I'm going in to pick him up. The old master has a bad temper. When he heard this, Sung Su also guessed who the old master Bei Yunj was talking about was. Don't tell me there's some random people from the outside world? But he didn't expect. Bei Yunj walked all the way to the conference room. When she opened the door, there were many well-known researchers who looked familiar. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched. Before she could say a word, the door automatically closed. But when she turned around, she didn't expect to see Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing saw Bei Yunj at this juncture and smiled insincerely. "Miss Pei, you seem to like squeezing into other people's circle. But this circle is different. If you want to step into it, you have to be strong." The sarcasm in her words was obvious. Bei Yunj chuckled softly. "What? Have you fixed the lighthouse alarm line last night?" Lai Yunqing's face turned red and her eyes shot out fierceness. Bei Yunj's words were a slap to the Academy K's face. But the next moment, before Lai Yunqing could speak, Luosier opened the door. He asked, "Bei Yunj, what are you doing here?" Bei Yunj thought for a moment and glanced at them. "I heard that Nancy is here?" When they heard this, they immediately understood who Bei Yunj was here for. She was really well informed. Lai Yunqing's eyes were filled with sarcasm. She laughed softly. "Miss Pei, do you have any relationship with Old Master Nancy? Old Master Nancy will come down to discuss the gathering later. If Miss Pei has nothing else to do, why don't you wait outside?" But just as she finished speaking, a voice sounded behind her. "Why are you gathered at the door?" The person who spoke was the dean and the person beside him was Nancy. End of chapter. Chapter 1044. Lai Yunqing's face froze, but she quickly smiled. "Nothing, we're discussing something." Bei Yunj glanced at Nancy and was about to speak, but Nancy spoke first. "Yo, where did this student come from?" Bei Yunj was speechless. What a drama queen. In the hall, Lai Yunqing's eyes showed a hint of mockery, but the dean was a little puzzled. Given Nancy's character, if she really did not know him, she would not speak. However, suddenly a girl ran down the corridor and bumped into Tseng Su. The dean reprimanded her. "What's wrong with you? Why are you running around the corridor?" If she bumped into Nancy, there would be trouble. The girl looked up and her face was full of tears. "I am sorry." Lai Yunqing frowned. "Valerie, aren't you in class?" Valerie was the newly hired teaching assistant of Continent K Academy. She was an intern in our nation's computing institute and taught Lai Yunqing's younger brother's class. "Professor Lai." Valerie was very pretty and she cried like a pear blossom. "Please help me change classes. I really can't take your brother anymore." "Valerie, you have to remember your place. Do you think you can change the rules of the academy just because you want to?" Lai Yunqing's voice was cold. The dean more or less understood what was going on. Lai Yunqing had a younger brother who seemed to have been found 2 years ago. Because of his high IQ, he was highly valued by the Lai family. However, he liked to touch female students and teachers. This matter had been blocked by Lai Yunqing many times. Furthermore, Nancy was still here. The dean coughed lightly. "Valerie, let's talk about this next time. Hurry up and go to class." When Valerie heard this, her whole body trembled and her eyes were filled with fear. "Young lady, you're crying like this. Did something happen?" Nancy frowned. When Valerie saw Nancy, her eyes widened in surprise. "And Mr. Nancy, it's just a small matter. Young people like to blow things up." The dean smiled and was about to ask Nancy to go back. Immediately after. Then he heard the girl's lazy and pleasant voice. "Thank you, Professor Lai, for letting me sit in on your class. Do you mind if I go back with this teaching assistant?" Hearing this, Valerie felt that the voice was a little familiar and subconsciously turned around. When he saw the beautiful girl in front of him, he froze. What followed was joy and excitement, and the light in his eyes shone brightly. "Why?" The smile in Bei Yunj's eyes faded. Only then did Valerie remember that her identity was confidential. But she actually met him here? Bei Yunj pulled out a tissue and handed it to Valerie. Her voice was not gentle. "It's just a class. What's there to cry about?" Valerie, on the other hand, sobbed and felt inexplicably relieved. She obediently took the tissue and didn't say anything. She didn't know if the teacher remembered her. Back then, she had only attended the teacher's class once. Although she couldn't understand anything, she couldn't forget the teacher's face. Later on, she also wanted to apply to be the teacher's student, but she was told that he no longer took in interns. This was Valerie's regret. She was only ranked 3rd in the beginning of her internship. If she had scored a little higher, she might have been the teacher's student. At this moment, Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. She didn't know how to stop Bei Yunj. But soon Lai Yunqing also comforted herself. Bei Yunj wasn't even from Continent K, so how could she go against her? Chapter 1045. Nancy could tell that Bei Yunj knew this girl. She said casually, Top universities should be quite open about their resources, right, Dean? The dean could only reply, yes, yes. Let's go, little teaching assistant. After Pei Yunj finished speaking lazily, Tseng Su was stunned. Miss, I have something to call you. You don't have to follow me. Bei Yunj turned around and saw a piece of paper behind Valerie. On the paper was written, I'm a green sow. Bei Yunj's eyes darkened and she quickly tore it off. This action also shocked Valerie. She couldn't help but turn around in fear. Teacher? Bei Yunj crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it into the trash can. She said slowly, it's okay. On the way. Valerie asked cautiously with a hint of nervousness in her voice, Teacher, do you remember me? Bei Yunj said, You're the girl in the third row who passed Tich a note. Valerie was speechless. Her teacher's memory was invincible. Teacher, I was just asking Tich some questions. I was afraid that I would disturb your class, so I... Valerie immediately explained. Bei Yunj replied indifferently, Why are you here as a teaching assistant? The exchange at the Research Institute was suggested by Director Marcus. Pei Yunj snorted. Marcus really likes to find trouble for no reason. Valerie was speechless. Still, he dared to talk back to anyone. Not long after, Valerie followed Bei Yunj into the classroom. She was also afraid that Lai Yunheng would bring other boys to tease Bei Yunj. Pay attention in class. Bei Yunj glanced at the worried Valerie. Valerie pursed her lips. Before she could say anything, she heard whistling from inside the classroom. This was a top university. Because of the bad behavior of a powerful person, many people were following them. Is this the new female student? She's too beautiful. Many boys were cheering. However, when Bei Yunj walked in and glanced at them casually, they felt an inexplicable sense of oppression that made them not dare to smile anymore. Let's continue with the class. As soon as Valerie finished speaking, someone in the audience followed suit and shouted, Why don't you introduce yourself? If you're shy, why don't we introduce you to someone first? The audience roared with laughter. Valerie's face turned green. But then she heard Bei Yunj ask calmly, Are you in a hurry to introduce yourself because you're afraid that people won't be able to find a place to visit your grave? In an instant, there was dead silence in the arena. Many people could tell that this new face was not someone to be trifled with. Some people also noticed that Bei Yunj's wristwatch was worth at least 8 digits. She was a classic example of someone born into a super wealthy family. Many people didn't dare to provoke Bei Yunj, but when Bei Yunj went to get the teaching materials, a young man in a sweatshirt suddenly shouted casually, Miss Valerie, I don't understand a question. This was Lai Yunheng. Bring it up. Valerie's face didn't look too good, but she could only say, Miss Valerie, my leg is not very convenient. Why don't you come down and explain it to me? Lai Yunheng leaned back and waited for Valerie to come down. Valerie's face changed, but she could only walk over. When Valerie came closer, Lai Yunheng took out the question and listened to her explanation. However, the others saw that Lai Yunheng was wearing slippers and holding a mirror between his toes. He aimed at the bottom of Valerie's skirt. The boys took the opportunity to take pictures. Lai Yunheng smiled slyly. End of chapter. Chapter 1046. However, not long after, Bei Yunj happened to return and saw this scene. She slowly bit down on the candy on the tip of her tongue, but her footsteps didn't stop as she walked to Valerie's side. Her beautiful eyes were slightly raised, but she was overflowing with hostility. The next moment, Bei Yunj's clean black leather boots stepped on Lai Yunheng's toes, and the sound of the mirror shattering could be heard. Lai Yunheng's face was twisted and hideous, and his painful howl sent chills down everyone's spine. Everyone lowered their heads. He saw the playful smile on Pei Yunj's face. She was still in high spirits, but under her black leather boots, there was a glaring blood. The scene was chilling. Valerie's face turned pale when she saw this scene. Her voice trembled as she said, Teacher. But at this moment, no one was paying attention to what Valerie was saying. Bei Yunj smiled and said, Student, your feet are quite long. It was not that there was no one in the K-Continent Academy who had a better background than Lai Yunheng, but they would not spoil their own interest for a piece of rat **T. Lai Yunheng didn't expect that the day he kicked an iron board would come so soon. Bei Yunj moved the soles of her shoes away, but Lai Yunheng's toes were almost cut off. It was a tragic sight. How dare you do this to me? Do you know who I am? My sister is Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunheng's face was full of pain, but he still yelled at Bei Yunj fiercely. I see. Bei Yunj smirked and raised her eyebrows playfully. What a pity. I never look at the owner when I hit a dog. Not long after, Lai Yunheng was sent to the hospital. Bei Yunj looked at the others with interest. But when Bei Yunj was called away, the others broke out in cold sweat. Who was this person? She was too cruel. Lai Yunheng's toes were almost cut off. In the dean's office, the dean's face was ashen. Valerie's face was pale. Dean, actually, shut up. I'll deal with you later. After the director of the hospital roared, he said to Bei Yunj, "Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in our school?" My classmate stretched his leg too far and accidentally stepped on it. Bei Yunj smiled lightly. The dean was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He knew what kind of person Lai Yunheng was. If not for the fact that Lai Yunheng's talent was not inferior to Lai Yunqing's, he would not have allowed Lai Yunheng to stay. He did not doubt that Lai Yunheng would do such a thing. But this silly little girl was too ruthless in her actions. Something happened to Lai Yunheng in the K-Continent Academy? Get your parents here. I want to see what kind of background you have. The dean said with a dark face. He had to deal with this person today so that he could give the Lai family an explanation. Dean, this has nothing to do with her. It's all because, before Valerie could finish, Bei Yunj went up to make a call. At this moment, Marcus was brushing his teeth when he answered the phone, but he was wide awake when he heard Bei Yunj's voice. There's something that you need to resolve. Bei Yunj's voice was emotionless. Gur. Marcus was stunned. He did not know what was going on. In 10 minutes, the K-Continent Academy will be connected to the dean's office for a conference call. Bei Yunj looked at his watch. At first, the dean thought that Bei Yunj was pretending to be mysterious. But before he could mock him, a video conference call came. He was stunned. This number was a little familiar. Chapter 1047. Marcus didn't have time to go to the conference room, so he could only start a video conference. He was wearing a suit shirt and a pair of blue shorts. He looked very refined. What's going on? Why are you at the K-Continent Academy? Marcus asked in bewilderment. The dean of the K-Continent Academy pondered for a while, and his face stiffened. He couldn't figure out how Bei Yunj knew Marcus. Aren't you going to tell me why my student was sent to the K-Continent Academy as a teaching assistant? Bei Yunj sat on the sofa, glanced at Marcus and asked casually. Marcus paused and glanced at Valerie. Valerie? Since when was Valerie her student? She attended one of my classes. Bei Yunj said naturally. Marcus was speechless. After attending one of her classes, she was her student. That meant that he had students all over the world. Valerie is your student? The dean was stunned. Valerie looked older than Bei Yunj. Saying that Bei Yunj was Valerie's student was more like it. Marcus was also a smart person. He could see that Valerie's eyes were red. She might have been wronged and Bei Yunj saw it. He sighed. He knew what Bei Yunj wanted to do. Soon, a smile appeared on Marcus' face. You still don't know her? Then let me introduce her to you. This is the former member of our country's computing institute that you mentioned to me more than a dozen times. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone suddenly fell silent. The dean froze and his mind was in a mess. What? What did she mean? This was... The dean immediately turned his head and looked at the girl who was less than 20 years old in front of him. There was only one thought in his mind. She was King done for. That's not right. How could you not know? Didn't we remind you that criminals had hacked into your system yesterday? The dean's face turned paler with every word Marcus said. They had hacked into the system. Let's talk about how to deal with my student who was sexually harassed in your school. Bei Yunj glanced at his phone and threw the evidence that Kay had found to the dean. The dean's face turned pale after reading it. Bei Yunj found Lai Yunheng's private group chat. There were all kinds of unsightly chat records. Last month, someone deliberately wet Valerie's clothes with water. Half a month ago, someone took the opportunity to hug Valerie and discussed in the group chat about Valerie's touch with other girls. A few days ago, someone had even left a note in Valerie's office filled with obscenities. Teacher, I didn't expect Valerie to be your student. The dean's to Valerie's face. I shouldn't have left Lai Yunheng alive. Bei Yunj chuckled softly, but the smile did not reach his eyes. He said slowly, I didn't expect that someone would dare to touch my student. Her eyes curved as she continued to ask him in a good mood, but her tone was gentle. Dean, do you think the reputation of the K-Country Academy will be destroyed in my hands? The dean's face turned pale. The scientific research community was undoubtedly the most competitive. Back then, in order to make him an honorary professor, Neely University had reportedly reached an in-depth cooperation with the Computing Institute. If he expressed his stance on this matter, the consequences would be unimaginable. P.S. Good night. Chapter 1048. Hearing this, Valerie, who was beside her, was a little helpless. She only dared to look at Pei Yunji's faint smile. However, just as the dean was at a loss, the door to the dean's office was suddenly pushed open. Lai Yunqing walked in with a dark expression. When she saw Bei Yunji, she sneered. "Wow, Miss Pei is still here." Yunqing. The dean was so frightened that his temples throbbed. He couldn't help but scold her. Lai Yunqing was considered the most promising newcomer in Continent K, so she had the right to be arrogant. However, the person sitting on the sofa opposite her was no ordinary person. It was the person who was nominated for both the Busaka and Farisk awards. Lai Yunqing narrowed her eyes. She didn't know what it meant for the dean to help Bei Yunji. Instead she sneered. "Dean, I've been with Continent K for many years. Now that my brother's leg is about to be crippled, why are you helping an outsider instead of helping me?" "Yunqing, you have to know how bad Lai Yunqing's behavior is in school." The dean's expression was ugly. He didn't dare to say anything in front of Bei Yunji. Moreover, the video conference was still going on. Marcus and the others saw this scene. Okay. Lai Yunqing sneered and nodded. Bad behavior? It seems that in the vice dean's eyes, as an associate professor and Lai Yunheng's sister, I have a stain on my record. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to continue staying here. Professor Lai, I didn't think of it that way. You. The dean started to have a headache. Lai Yunqing was a core member of Continent K's Computing Association. If Lai Yunqing left, it would affect Continent K's academy greatly. Now, as Lai Yunheng's sister, I just want to seek justice for my brother. I want the person who hurt him to pay the price. Lai Yunqing stared at Bei Yunji gloomily and sneered. Miss Pei, I didn't argue with you because you were Luocia's friend. However, if you can't give me an explanation, you'd better call your parents here. Our Lai family is not to be trifled with in Continent K. Hearing this, the principal's heart skipped a beat. He was afraid that if Bei Yunji was unhappy, she would punish Lai Yunqing along with the Academy of K Continent. Suddenly, a burst of applause attracted Lai Yunqing's attention. Good, Professor Lai is really bold. Lai Yunqing took a closer look and recognized that the person in the video conference was Marcus. Her face turned pale. Director Marcus? She had almost forgotten that no matter how weak Valerie's background was, she was still from the Our Nation's Computing Institute. And her brother had indeed been harassing the people at Country R's Computing Institute. True enough. Marcus laughed, but his eyes were cold. I haven't even gotten an explanation for the sexual harassment of the members I targeted, yet Professor Lai has come knocking on my door. Lai Yunqing looked flustered. She really didn't expect that the director's office was still holding a video conference. He was just an ordinary member. Why was a core member of the Our Nation's Research Institute attending a meeting? Just as Marcus was about to launch an attack, he suddenly paused and smiled meaningfully. Isn't Professor Lai looking for Miss Pei's parents? Lai Yunqing was stunned by this sudden question. But then, a familiar voice sounded outside the door. Who's looking for me? Lai Yunqing's expression changed. She turned around and saw Nancy. End of chapter. Chapter 1049. What was going on? Bei Yunji's parent was Nancy? Why? The color drained from Lai Yunqing's face, and the dean subconsciously closed his eyes, feeling very regretful. Sure enough, Nance knew Bei Yunji from the start. Marcus? What are you doing here? Nancy's tone was full of wariness. Don't think that he didn't know that Marcus and Zhong Shenglin were like ghosts, thinking about how to kidnap other people's disciples every day. Teacher Nancy, it was your student who hurt Professor Lai's brother for the sake of a member of our institute. Look, someone is here to denounce her. Hearing Marcus's words, Lai Yunqing's expression became even worse. Bei Yunji was Nancy's student? What was going on? Didn't Nancy never accept students? How could Bei Yunji become Nancy's student? However, after Nancy learned the truth, his face darkened. Bei Yunji. Bei Yunji's fingers, which were holding the candy wrapper, paused. What do you mean? I pretended not to know you. Don't you know how to coax an old man like me? You even called Marcus this lousy guy? Nancy was stunned, then he said angrily. Bei Yunji, Marcus's team couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to look at their leader's expression. Nancy's eyes widened, and the more he spoke, the sadder he became. What, do you want to change masters? To think that I didn't even sleep for 3 days looking for you. Sure enough, this little girl doesn't have a heart at all. Bei Yunji's eyebrows moved and the corners of his lips twitched. After a while he said, I didn't mean that. Marcus's heart was sour and he despised Nancy, this old bastard. Before he became Bei Yunji's master, he always called her good Gur. After he became her master, he treated himself like Gur's grandfather every day, and he even asked Gur to coax him. Was there anyone more shameless than this old thing? Valerie is from Marcus's institute. Bei Yunji's eyelids twitched, and he could only lick his red lips as he explained. Didn't you hear what he said? He told you to call your parents, and Marcus is your parent? In Nancy's mind, she kept imagining Marcus seizing the opportunity to seize power in her absence. She couldn't wait to fight with Marcus. Marcus, was this old thing was getting more and more out of control? Bei Yunji and Nance never thought that Nance's brain would be like this. Weren't you unwilling? The girl's usually high-spirited face revealed a hint of helplessness. Nancy's entire body. Everyone's a Yunjizan? Nancy's? These are two different things. This old man only has one disciple in his life. How can I let others bully her? Lai Yunqing had just heard Nancy's words when his cold gaze slowly swept over her. Professor Lai, do you have any advice for this old man's education? Lai Yunqing trembled. His body was already cold. How many people in this circle dared to challenge Nancy? This matter has nothing to do with Professor Lai. Professor Lai has been in a bad mood recently, and he offended Mr. Nancy and Miss Pei. The dean seized the opportunity to make Lai Yunqing owe him a favor. End of chapter. Chapter 1050. Just as expected. Lai Yunqing looked at the dean gratefully, but when he glanced at Bei Yunji, there was still a trace of unwillingness in his eyes. After Lai Yunqing left, Mr. Nancy, Marcus, our school has decided to expel Lai Yunheng and give Miss Valerie some financial compensation. The dean asked carefully, what do you think of this? This has nothing to do with me. Nancy snorted coldly and was about to ask Bei Yunji to leave when he heard the dean hurriedly say, Teacher, since you've already helped us once, can we beg you to help us again? As soon as the dean finished speaking, Nancy subconsciously looked at him with a trace of shock in his eyes. How did he know Ge'er's identity? Half a minute later, Nancy said to Bei Yunji, you go back first, I still have something to say. Bei Yunji nodded. After he left, the atmosphere became even colder. Dean Donner, your identity can't be revealed to the public. Nancy's face was expressionless, and his pair of eagle-like blue eyes revealed an inviolable majesty. The dean smiled. I didn't tell Professor Lai Yunqing either, right? Don't worry, teacher has helped our school before, why would I harm her? On the contrary, if teacher can become our school's honorary professor, I will do my best to protect her reputation. It wasn't that the dean didn't know that those who met her would definitely sign a confidentiality agreement. But unfortunately, he didn't sign that confidentiality agreement. No one would have thought that he would expose his identity for a student he met by chance. Nancy's eyes darkened. He understood what the dean meant. He could keep it a secret, but he had to help him solve the problem he was facing, get more benefits for the K-Continent Academy, and stand on the same side as the K-Continent Academy. Donner, you're quite ambitious. Nancy's tone revealed a lot of anger. But at this time the dean was fearless because of this. Especially now, when he was still alone in the K-Continent Academy. Mr. Nancy, please think about it. Besides, this is not a bad thing for the teacher. The dean's eyes flashed with greed. At that time, it was rumored that he was about 35 years old. But he never would have thought that he wasn't even 20 years old. Such a super genius could bring too many benefits to their academy. Therefore, even if he offended Nancy, he still wanted to obtain these unimaginable benefits. Nancy sneered and said angrily, Donner, do you really think that I can't do anything to you now that I'm no longer in this circle? She's my disciple. If you dare to let anything happen to her, I have plenty of ways to tear down your academy. After that, Nancy slammed the door and left. But as soon as he turned the corner, he saw Bei Yunji waiting lazily at the door. Seeing Nancy's furious expression, Bei Yunji knew in her heart that she would definitely be reprimanded this time. She thought quickly and had just organized her words when Nancy suddenly walked towards her and raised her hand. Bei Yunji had an inexplicable bad feeling in her heart. She lowered her head subconsciously, but she didn't expect that in the next moment, a warm and dry palm would suddenly rub her head. After Nancy's faint sigh dissipated, only the curvature of her mouth remained. Let's go home. This guy was more unbridled than when he was young. Nancy knew very well what Bei Yunj was thinking. End of chapter. Chapter 1051. If Bei Yunj had only helped Valerie deal with someone, Valerie would probably get into even bigger trouble in the future. By doing this, she was undoubtedly protecting Valerie's path of retreat. Bei Yunj's eyebrows twitched. This was the first time she had seen Nancy so gentle. Master, you're not angry anymore? Nancy walked in front of Bei Yunj and snorted lightly. Since you're born as a human, you have to live like a human. What's there to be angry about? As a researcher, a sense of mission was greater than one's own strength. This was the right direction for future research and development. Bei Yunj's lips curled up as she walked slowly behind him. You have to remember that the older generation of researchers in your country are worthy of respect by countless people. Nancy narrowed his eyes and recalled the memories of Zhong Xinglin and the others secretly coming to his class. He could not help but chuckle silently. Nancy changed his profession at the age of 20 and became the principal of Neely University at the age of 30. It was also during those years that he met Zhong Xinglin. At that time, the scientific research and technology of Country A was very different from that of Country R. As a result, even the extremely talented Zhong Xinglin suffered a lot when he was studying abroad. However, Zhong Xinglin was willing to study wholeheartedly. He often hid in a corner and listened to Nancy teach graduate students. Nancy pretended not to know. In the 9th year, Zhong Xinglin won the KZ Busaka Award. After that, Zhong Xinglin resolutely chose to develop in the country when faced with the temptation of a salary that was hundreds of times higher overseas. Even in the few years when he returned, he had faced resistance from the domestic circle because of differences in views. However, in Nancy's eyes, old researchers like Zhong Xinglin should be remembered the most in history. Bei Yunj glanced at Nancy. These words were often said to her by Meng Liang in her previous life. Not long after. Before Bei Yunj could speak, she heard Nancy say angrily, "Who does Donner think he is? How dare he threaten me? When I destroyed the entire circle back then, he was still playing with mud somewhere." Bei Yunj, who was walking behind them, was speechless. Bei Yunj, listen to me. Only those cowardly and incompetent masters would make their disciples behave themselves. What's wrong with my disciple being a little arrogant? Even if you poke a hole in the sky, I have a way to cover it. Nancy was also a hot topic in the circle back then. Because of Nancy, Neely University became the world's top school. Go back first. Come find me at 73 Cliff Road tomorrow. Nancy glanced at her and said, Master, why don't we have a meal together? Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. I still have to deal with something. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Nancy left in a hurry. Bei Yunj looked at Nancy's back with an obscure look in her eyes. Not long after, the corners of her lips curled up again. Miss Pei, Master Du is here. Tseng Su hurried over again. Go buy me some drinks. I'm going back to find him now. Bei Yunj nodded. After Tseng Su left, she called Shang Yan. What's wrong? Shang Yan was already used to Bei Yunj not visiting him for no reason. Bei Yunj smiled straightforwardly. President Shang, I seem to have caused some trouble. Shang Yan was speechless. What did you do? Shang Yan pressed between his eyebrows. I'm at Continent K Academy. The dean already knows my identity. Bei Yunj's eyes curved as she slowly chewed on the candy, but there was no warmth in her eyes. Find a chance to get the dean to sign a confidentiality agreement. P.S. After today's update, I'll send a red packet. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.